The minutes of the previous meeting have been circulated. Are they agreed? Thank you. Does any member wish to declare a disclosable pecuniary or any other significant interest in any item being considered at tonight's meeting? Regarding the report of the annual review of councillors' allowances in the Administration Committee report, as all members have an interest, we will manage this with a minimum of disruption, and all members present in the chamber will therefore be deemed as having declared a personal interest in these items unless the member objects, and this fact will be noted and recorded in the minutes. Is that agreed? Does any member wish to make a declaration pursuant to Section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, which relates to members' council tax payments and ability of members to vote on matters relating to the level of calculation of the council tax or the arrangements of administering council tax? Okay. I have no special announcements. I shall now ask the Chief Executive to report apologies for absences or lateness for this meeting.
Thank you. I've received apologies from Councillors Elizabeth Campbell, Stuart Graham, Dahabo Issay, Sydney Yankson and Sonia Zvedeniuk. I have received apologies for lateness from Councillor Emma Will.
Thank you, Councillor Lowry. I will invite those who have registered in advance to speak to address the Council in turn for no more than 5 minutes. A member of the leadership team and member of the principal minority party will then be able to respond for up to 2 minutes each. We have 2 people or 3 people? I think 2, right? 3. We have 3 people who have requested to speak, and there's only half an hour for public speaking. Therefore, I will invite everyone to be as brief as possible, please. The purpose of this part of the council meeting is for those who live, work, or go to school in the borough to raise issues of local concern. So I would like to thank the speakers for coming and coming tonight, but would also remind them to bear this in mind when it's their turn to speak. I shall ask any speakers who reach their 5 minutes to bring their address promptly to a close to ensure that all speakers have a fair and equal opportunity to be heard and to receive responses from councillors. I would now like to invite Kieran Terry to ask a question. Mr. Terry.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, councillors. My name is Kieran Terry. I'm a borough resident in Earls Court. Firstly, I want to express my thanks to you for the generally excellent quality of service delivered by the council, especially the twice-weekly bin collections, clean streets, decent highways and good schools, despite the low council tax. It's been great to see the last year's rebate for Band 82 properties, which was very welcome. However, one particular issue I know you're aware of is the antisocial behaviour we experience in Earls Court. Since being here, I've noticed it's extremely common to see open drink and drug use in many areas, including the entrances to private housing, plus one other particular location, which I'll come to shortly, with the associated packaging and paraphernalia strewn across many of the local streets. Aggressive begging is very common, especially outside both tube station entrances, but also right up to my front gate, as well as those front gates of other residents. People regularly cycle on the pavement, even on roads such as Kempsford Gardens and Earls Court Square, which are dedicated cycleways and which have good cycle infrastructure associated with them. One particular place which causes a large number of these issues for local residents is the Look Ahead hostel on Warwick Road. Many of these issues, including drug use, alcohol use, the waste from these, and also begging, are frequent in the portico right next to the front window of the hostel, with little or no evidence of interjection by those managing the hostel. To emphasise, my issue isn't with the residents of the hostel. They are very much part of the borough community, as everyone in this room is, and it's absolutely right that these people get the support they need. However, the operation of this particular hostel and the concentration of hostels in a very small area are not conducive to a strong support environment for people with complex needs. Another issue which has arisen in the last year has been the demand by the Liberal Democrats for drug injection rooms in the area, which has sent shockwaves through the local community and has frightened many local residents. I'll be grateful for reassurance from the Council that this will not be taken any further. I have, however, been very pleased to see the leadership the Council has taken to alleviate some of the issues in Earls Court over the past couple of years, and I've submitted my strong support to the recent consultation for the PSPO in the area. It's been especially pleasing to see many of the issues I've previously referred to in this statement being addressed directly in the draft PSPO, and it's great to see what has been put forward by the Council is reflective of the issues we as residents face. All this is great news for Earls Court residents. Now the consultation for the PSPO has closed, can the Council leadership please confirm the next steps for this vital pipeline of improvements to Earls Court? Thank you.
Councillor Edinburgh, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Kieran, for coming this evening to remind us of the issues in Earls Court. And I know everyone in Earls Court is keen for the Council to make progress in implementing the Public Space Protection Order. Many, if not all of the issues you've raised here tonight were included in the PSPO consultation. And we understand the depth of feeling in the ward towards these antisocial acts and are confident the results of the PSPO consultation will give us the support required to deliver a robust order for the ward. So to give you a rough idea of the timeline, the consultation ended on the 20th of February, and we've had an incredible 460 responses, which is very, very good, and I'm really pleased with that. And over 90% of the people supported the proposed PSPO. So officers are now analysing the survey results in detail, and once this process has been finalised and legal are happy with the proposed restrictions, the consultation report will be issued probably mid-March, and hopefully, I think it's going to be delayed slightly because of the Easter break at the end of March, beginning of April. Hopefully something will be implemented sort of mid-April. You also mentioned about the drug injection rooms, and I just want to reassure you that the use of safe rooms is not supported by current evidence or policy, and there are absolutely no plans to implement them. Thank you.
Councillor Wade, to respond, please.
Just on a point of order, Kieran, please could you get your facts right? That was, in fact, a misquotation, which sometimes happens when the press get rather overexcited. So if you could just set that aside before I give my piece, please.
I think it was in your own literature that was delivered through my door, and also on BBC News.
Well, it was in fact BBC News that perhaps misinterpreted what was actually being said, which was we do have a problem and we do have hostels and they do need to address the problems of their clients with care. So is it possible for me to, having corrected, start? Thank you for coming this evening. Residents have complained about ASB, overt drug activity, in the Earls Court ward for years. It was a resident demand for change which resulted in the 3 Earls Court ward councillors' request for a call to action in 2022. It has taken some time for the council to respond to complaints. The Earls Court ASB meeting with hostel wardens and the police have restarted, but we still need the meetings with housing association officers. The proposed Public Spaces Protection Order is to be welcomed, but we would like to see the order to work so that residents can feel safe on the streets and in their homes. However, we do worry about how the proposals will be implemented, where there is a sufficient manpower to ensure proposals actually affect change and a chance of success. How the scheme will be evaluated, a success or failure, and what learning can be taken from it. We must raise the concern about whether there are sufficient resources. I understand that no additional money will be put in place. Perhaps somebody will correct me on that. Mental health and substance abuse are primary triggers of our street population problem. And with the police revised mantra, right care, right person, how are the street population teams going to work within this new framework? Are they integrated? Are they reactive? Are they proactive? Have all the new styled wardens been employed, trained? How well do they know our area? Where are the powers of enforcement? It is essential that the activity is not restricted just to Earls Court Road. Our residential side streets and squares have also got their fair share of problems. While we wish this initiative to work, there is a concern that despite good intentions, that these proposals may be a tick box exercise.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Terry. I would now like to invite Leanna Olive to ask a question. Miss Olive, you have 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I stand before you tonight, sit before you tonight with a very heavy heart to ask you my question in 2 parts. But before I begin...
Miss Olive, could I just... may I please ask the public in the public gallery to sit down, please? I did announce that at the beginning of the... Could you please sit down? No, I understand. I would really appreciate it, please. We can see you. I would really be grateful if you could sit down. We can see your posters, we can see everything. May I please request you sit down? Ladies, come on. We have a lot of work to get through. I would be so grateful. It's a request, it's a polite request. I'm very grateful. Thank you so much. Really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you. That's very kind. Thank you so much. Ms. Olivier, you may continue. Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay. I sit before you tonight with a very heavy heart to ask you my question in 2 parts. But before I begin, I would ask each of you to really listen and open up your hearts and minds to the questions being asked. My first question is in regards to the complete lack of mental health support for your residents who are grieving and traumatized by the current genocide that's approaching 5 months now in Palestine. As is well documented, RBKC has the 2nd largest Arab and Muslim population in London. You know this. This isn't news to you. However, despite this fact, RBKC yet again, just as they did in the wake of Grenfell, are missing in action, in support, provision, empathy and services to support our Arab and Muslim brothers and sisters and us. Indeed, 2 months ago, in a prior leadership meeting, you were asked what you were providing as support for the community to deal with the trauma, loss and horrors unfolding in Gaza. Ms. Campbell said she was talking to religious leaders at Al-Manar Mosque and Notting Hill Synagogue. Sadly, talking to religious leaders about what support they were giving did not answer the question about what our RBKC was providing. However, what Ms. Campbell's follow-up was the most horrific insult to all residents present, particularly our North Kensington Muslim residents who were in attendance that night. As she stated, she had met several times with the Prevent team. What, may I ask, did she think she was saying? How was this an appropriate response to the question asked? We were therefore left to speculate that she imagined we were all being radicalised and drawn into potential acts of terrorism. What else were we meant to think after that response? Does Ms. Campbell not realise that statements like that are not only further harmful to one's state of mind, negate the pain that so many are in, but also engage and further traumatise the already traumatised? And so I repeat the question asked 2 months ago and hope the response discusses practical, on-hand resources, spaces and efforts to support your communities rather than further build lack of trust. You've provided support for other local and national crises, so we know it can be done. After Grenfell, various systems were eventually put in place. During COVID, test centres were set up, Age UK was notified of elderly who might need help, food bank support was extended, and when the never-ending cost of living crisis began, you set up and actually still run financial advice clinics, encouraged community centres to open up their doors and offer warm spaces, and publicised financial help and grants that could be accessed. When the Ukraine war began, you offered safe spaces, even here at the town hall, where those affected or worried about their families could go and be supported. But where has the hands-on practical support been for those affected by the genocide happening in Palestine? Again, this leaves us wondering, why is it that our Arab communities don't matter to you? You are failing to recognise the levels of trauma, hurt and pain on the ground, and whilst you are failing all of us with your lack of care, you are specifically failing your Palestinian residents. Therefore, to help you grasp your negligence in this matter, I'm going to share a brief encounter from 2 weeks ago when I was outside Al-Manar Mosque handing out cards after a very busy Friday call to prayer, advising on which dates should be avoided to break the daylight fasting during Ramadan. Majoritively, people were grateful to receive the information cards being given out, thanking those of us there as it was a sign of support that we understood what was happening in the Middle East and were there for them. Imagine that, all of you, that a thing as simple as handing out a card brought comfort. But one man came out and asked if he could speak to me for a while after, thanking me for the card. Stepping out of the way of others, he said, "It means so much to know that you and others care. We feel so alone. I found out this week that all of my family had been killed in a bombing by Israel. I broke down and said I was sorry that this country had failed him and sorry for his loss. He began to cry too and said, 'Everyone, it's only me now. They killed my wife, my children, my parents, my brothers and sisters, my aunts and uncles and their children, and my grandparents. Everyone. I lost all 38 members of my family. It's just me now.' And I just kept saying, 'I'm so sorry we failed you.' He then said, 'No one listened or cared when I kept asking for help to bring my wife and children here. No one. I tried so hard with all the officials and no one would hear me.' I again apologised. He then said, 'But they are the lucky ones.'"
Miss Olive, your time is up.
I'm sorry, I really need to finish. And actually, the other statement by Mohammed is less than a minute. So
I know, but it's please, if you could wrap it up.
No, it's really
that's good.
important. Thank you. He finished by saying, "They are in Jannah together, whilst I am here alone, and all I want to do is join them in Jannah." His pain, suffering, grief and trauma was palpable, but he's not just one Palestinian in this barrier that is suffering, who has nowhere to go. And all I can say is shame on you, RBKC, for yet again failing people. You can't bring back his family, but you could have set up services by now where Palestinians or anyone could go to speak to others suffering similarly, where just talking could help them, if for nothing else to not feel so alone. So, what are you going to provide and when? Because the death toll increases each minute of each day and time is running out for them and for you. My second question, and it's very short, forms a natural follow-on from the mental health trauma for Palestinians.
Miss Olive, I appreciate your passion. I appreciate everything, but we do...
It's literally just a tiny paragraph.
10 seconds, please. Thank you.
From a natural follow-on from mental health trauma for Palestinians and empathisers currently not being recognised. On the 20th of February, you had scheduled a diplomatic evening where champagne and canapes would have been enjoyed by various diplomats from embassies located in RBKC, including the Israeli ambassador, Tipsy Hotlovy. Thankfully, we found out, and with the support of Palestine Solidarity Campaign, launched a campaign to get it cancelled.
Miss Olive, may I... Miss Olive, may I please ask you to stop?
So my question for this, and this is it, my question for this is, whilst we're grateful that you our campaign worked and you actually listened to us for the first time.
Thank you.
Why on earth did you ever think that this was an appropriate thing to hold?
Okay, Ms. Olive, thank you so much. Thank you.
Can you confirm that this event will not be
Councillor Randall, would you like to respond to this, please? Thank you.
Madam Mayor, and thank you, Liana, for your question. I know it's in a few parts, and I thank you for your time in coming in today. I'm Josh, for those who don't know me, and I'm the lead member for Adult Social Care and Public Health. And I'm very happy to answer your question on mental health. Unfortunately, Councillor Campbell is not here tonight, so is not able to answer your specific questions for her. She is with Grenfell Bereaved and Survivors this evening with the Secretary of State and the NHS. So I'm sure we will reflect your questions back to her after this evening. Firstly, I think everyone understands in this chamber that the events in Gaza and Israel is having a real impact on our residents in this borough.
That's right.
It's causing crisis with family and friends, and it's causing a lot of anguish amongst many of our communities. And also, we're also very aware of the rise of Islamophobia, which we absolutely condemn, and the rise of anti-Semitism that also come from that as well, and how residents feel about this. And that is, again, something I absolutely condemn, and I think everyone in this chamber would agree with me on that particular front. So in terms of the services we are offering, in regards to mental health to start with, so the council does not provide mental health services. That is with the NHS. However, we work very closely with them, and we have to, in order to ensure that they get their services into the borough. Now, we have a scrutiny function through the council in order to do that, and instances such as this, and such as yourself coming to speak, is a real way to get that through and to have resident feedback to say what we can do better, I think, is what you're trying to raise here, which I completely understand. So we are talking with the NHS. I just had a meeting today with the CEO of the ICB. But not just that, not just about this issue. This has been going on for some time, as we know. We also work with K&C Therapies, who provide support to people who are suffering anxiety, stress, especially in the conflict in regards to Gaza. They offer therapeutic support to manage emotions and other incidents, especially that gentleman that you referred to, which is an absolutely tragic story. And we also work in partnership with our community living well spaces as well. So residents can access this at any time, and they can also access any services that the borough offers. Excuse me, yes, a very good point, but we can raise all that as well. We also have our MCAS services.
Councillor Randall, if you could...
Oh,
please.
sorry, I only have 2 minutes. I'm sorry, Liana. We also have MCAS services in North Kensington, which we're trying to protect, but that's something that anyone can walk into 24/7 a day without an appointment to get any support they need, mental health or otherwise. And I think that's a really important thing that we also really need to encourage. The NHS itself has a duty to support anyone suffering trauma. That's the NHS's duty. We will do everything to support that.
Councillor
the NHS's
Randall.
duty to do that. Oh, sorry, Madam Mayor, thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Thaxter, please.
Thank you, Leonora, for coming in with this very valuable question to us and our traumatized resident in North Kensington. I would like to say I'm very saddened by your story you just read out, and I'm really troubled by it, listening to it. Leonora is asking about services, and where they advertise. When Grenfell happened, the council had an office in here and services here. When COVID happened, likewise, and also the Ukraine war. So what happened to the violence, suffering, and loss of lives for the people in Palestine? And that's something that we need to try and set up as soon as possible. We're asking for services from the council. We can work with our partners, but we need to show that we care for our residents in our borough. As we know, trauma that's gone on dealt with will cause big problems in the end, and this is something that we need to step on ASAP as a council. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Oliver. I would now like to read out a question on behalf of Mr. Abu Kachab. Time after time, we have heard you speak about Palestinians in a homogeneous... So I would like to ask, what efforts will the Council's executive take to resolve the current lack of dialogue, understanding, intricacies and acknowledgement of the Palestinian community in the borough? Councillor Taylor-Smith, please.
Thank you, Leonora, for coming in with this very valuable question to us and our traumatized resident in North Kensington. I would like to say I'm very saddened by your story you just read out, and I'm really troubled by it, listening to it. Leonora is asking about services, and where they advertise. When Grenfell happened, the council had an office in here and services here. When COVID happened, likewise, and also the Ukraine war. So what happened to the violence, suffering, and loss of lives for the people in Palestine? And that's something that we need to try and set up as soon as possible. We're asking for services from the council. We can work with our partners, but we need to show that we care for our residents in our borough. As we know, trauma that's gone on dealt with will cause big problems in the end, and this is something that we need to try and step on ASAP as a council. Thank you.
Thank you.
There we go. Sorry, thank you. First of all, Liana, can I just thank you for coming in and telling us that story, and thank you for what we're doing outside of the Almanar. So, to Mohammed, and I hope he's listening online, again, thank you very much for your question. So I think, first of all, as Josh has done, I mean, we have to acknowledge this ongoing conflict and how devastating that is, and the impact it's having on both Israel and Gaza, and both of the Israeli and Palestinian communities, and the significant human suffering that's going on with extensive damage to the infrastructure. But, you know, as has been discussed, this damage goes beyond pure physical damage, as psychological and emotional tolls on individuals and communities are substantial and very widespread. So, as a council, you know, it is our duty to foster an environment where our residents feel safe, secure, and indeed listened to. And the council also has a role in supporting local conversations to better understand what others are coming from, where they're coming, where the tensions are, how to work collaboratively. So I completely agree with what's being said, and that this has to be achieved through encouraging an open dialogue, and essential in creating an environment that values both diversity, promotes our inclusivity, and bridges divides. And I'd like to give a couple of examples. So, as has been mentioned, we've got very strong links with our local faith groups, and formally through our Faith Communities Partnership, which was established several years ago, and this very much increases the dialogue between the faith groups and the council and other organisations and partners, and that's something which we need to continue to capitalise on. And we continue to learn from these important connections, and I'm extremely grateful for the work undertaken across this sector in encouraging collaborations and conversations, and to build bridges and promote a better and mutual understanding. So, and the Almanar, which has been referred to in particular, has shown great leadership at both local and regional level, and its interfaith engagement works closely with churches and synagogues, and that's to be applauded. So, additionally, the Council's preventative...
Councillor Taylor-Smith.
Sorry.
Just a gentle reminder.
Just to say that we have an advisory group made out of faith and community, youth and women's group with RBKC, including a representative from the Palestinian community from RBKC. And the group's meeting last November focused on the impact of the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict is having on local communities. And I've been told that it was understandably a very emotional meeting, and that key messages from the meeting have been raised with the Home Office, and including a request for a meeting with the Home Office Secretary. But thank you again for your question.
Thank you so much. Councillor Ali, to respond, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Liana, for coming today. And yes, I do agree. We have met at Almanar, and I saw you actually giving out this leaflet. So I thank you and others for coming to the centre and supporting the local community. The issue you've raised is a very important issue, and as a leader of the Labour group, I have spoken about this issue last 2 council meetings. Tonight is the 3rd one, and I will continue to speak about it. And if you were to listen, that would be appreciated. But the fact of the matter is, we understand the situation where the leader of the council, when Israel was attacked on the 7th by Hamas and lost almost 1,000, the leader of the council wrote to the ambassador, and obviously on our behalf, or the council's behalf, and expressed her sadness. We would like to know what the leader of the council has done for the nearly 30,000 people have been done for the communities, and what she can do now to express her sorrow for the innocent people that have been lost in life. And I would suggest, if we can get the leader of the council to meet with the local Palestinian communities, and I understand the local Palestinian communities are not just Muslims, they have Christians, they're different faiths. Yep. We will never refer to them as a one homogeneous community, one faith community, and I think that's very, very important. So I welcome your presence today, this evening, and I hope that the leader of the council, if not the deputy leader of the council, both of them can take time for all of us to meet with the local Palestinian community, and once and for all, pray for peace. Every war ends with negotiation and peaceful, so we should not wait any more civilian lives to be lost anymore in this war. And I hope that, or pray that one day we will visit that part of the region of the world, and so the peace and security will be enjoyed by all communities and not just one or specific countries. Thank you very much for coming once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Thank you, Mr. Abu Kacha, for your question. Do members have any petitions to present? No, nothing, okay. Item 7. Statement by the Deputy Leader and response by the Leader of the Opposition Group. I now invite the Deputy Leader of the Council to address the meeting for up to 5 minutes. Councillor Taylor-Smith, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And it is a pleasure to be standing in for Elizabeth tonight. But I have to say, from last council meeting, it's going to be a very difficult act for me to follow. So I think we can agree that the hearing reflections on the Grenfell testimony week at our last meeting, was hard for us to listen to right here in this chamber. But it was a very important and a very poignant moment for us all. And it was candid and open synopsis of where we are as an organisation, where we want to be and where we should be. And recognition that we still have a long, long way to go. And I can say tonight that that story hasn't stopped there, or either since there. And the council has held important sessions with our staff, notably all managers and in the organisation, to relay what we heard at Testimony Week back to the organisation. And we have to have honest conversations about moving forward with more pace and moving forward with more focus and completing the change of culture which started back in June 2017. So, Madam Mayor, Elizabeth can't make it tonight, despite this being an evening for setting a budget. And the reason is that she's with the Secretary of State of Levelling Up Housing and Communities, meeting with bereaved families and survivors to continue the discussion on Grenfell recovery and the work on the Memorial Commission and the important matters as the 7th anniversary and final inquiry comes into view. So I think we can all see that this effort and recovery should never and will never stop, and nor should it would be, and nor will it. The former Bishop of Liverpool came yesterday, the Right Reverend Bishop James, and he puts it very well. He says, in the aftermath of a disaster, there is tragedy. In the long term, there is tragedy and trauma. And the council is here for the long term. Madam Mayor, tonight is budget night. And I know colleagues and Johnny are very keen to talk through our proposals and outline yet another sensible, balanced budget. And this is something that we can be proud of. It's something that we do every year. And despite costs increasing, shifts in demand, tougher times, the cost of living challenges, we still balance the books. And I know colleagues will work hard again next year to look at how we can keep taxes low, make services work, better for less, and focus on putting money back in the pockets of people who live in this borough. You see, here on these benches, we are all very much focused on local issues, solving problems with people and tackling issues we have control over. And we've seen over the many weeks protests in our borough and on our streets. And I just want to reiterate what Elizabeth has said numerous times here, and her visits to mosques, synagogues and churches. We stand by and for community cohesion wherever possible, bringing people together so we can discuss the impact of world politics on our communities and find unity together. So yes, we are a council, therefore our role is to fix the potholes and collect the bins twice a week. But we also want to work in partnership with our communities and to bring cohesion and keep working at it every day. So we all value free speech in this borough and in this chamber. And it is one of the reasons why we maintain time for questions to be brought here from the public and to be answered. And I really sincerely hope that that continues and goes some way to make sure that important views from the public are heard in this chamber. And with that, I will give time back to the meeting so we can discuss the important matters of the budget. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ali, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you may have heard just moments ago when the residents were here, I believe this side of the chamber will deal with issues when our residents raise, and that's why we have residents, and we cannot hide from the reality. As you're well aware of, the war between Israel and Hamas continues, with increasing deaths of nearly 30,000 and mainly innocent men, women and children. Our residents have been contacting us to raise this issue with the council for almost nearly past 5 months. They held protests outside this chamber and inside this chamber. They also spoke about the council, and last speaker we've seen this evening, or we've heard from her, calling for everlasting ceasefire in the Middle East. We, the Kensington and Chelsea Labour Group of councillors, do welcome the immediate humanitarian ceasefire and releasing the hostages called by the Labour Member of Parliament under the leadership of Sir Keir Starmer, who has taken the real leadership on this question or this issue when he actually challenged the Prime Minister to do the same, but the Prime Minister did not and walked away from voting. I hope Sir Keir Starmer will be the next Prime Minister at the end of this year so that he can deal with the real issues locally and internationally. Madam Mayor, tackling inequality in Kensington and Chelsea is a real problem that we need to really think about it. Inequality in our borough is getting worse year after year, and I'm afraid it's not going to get better due to the lack of leadership from the council leadership and from the government. Our BKC residents do want to know what the council leadership is doing about the deepening inequality in our borough that will continue impacting both young and elderly people in our borough. As a global prosperity researcher, I have been researching about this issue of intensifying inequality in our borough. And on that note, I would like to thank the researchers in our borough from different areas. To mention a few researchers from University of Manchester, University College London, UCL, and UCL Citizen Advice Academy, and London Trust. But special thanks to the Kensington and Chelsea Foundation charity for its extensive report in 2021, which has now been updated and refers to the last 18 months, Madam Mayor. Our borough is the most unequal borough, and our residents are suffering from deep deprivation, which is a damaging lack of material considered to be basic necessities in our society. What are these basic necessities, Madam Mayor? They are food, housing, health, and local economy, and work that actually pays wages worth living in our borough. The inequality reports that have been covered, Madam Mayor, that has covered for the last few years, including education, health, economy, and the housing. For example, education. The disparities in achieving and the outcome of children from different ethnic and economic backgrounds are amongst the highest in the country in RBKC. Our local state schools have highlighted our local state schools have the highest school exclusion in London, which means a significant number of our children in our borough do not have access to mainstream education, which is often a pathway to school exclusion, then followed by unemployment, followed by youth violence, ultimately increasing the prison population, which is not what we want. Madam Mayor, 2 days ago, I and Councillor Claire Simmons, as well as Joe Powell, the candidate for Kensington and Bayswater Labour Party, parliamentary candidate, attended a youth council here in Kensington, here in the council. And then to make sure, for that reason, I mentioned Joe's name, but let's just be honest, he was not canvassing there because the kids, the children who were there, young people, were under 16, so they cannot vote for. He was not there to canvass. He was not there to canvass. He was there to listen to them, and if he's given the opportunity to be our Member of Parliament, then he will raise their issues at the relevant departments at the next Labour government, hopefully. Madam Mayor, the majority of the Youth Council attendees wanted to hear this council to hear their main concerns, which are learning from how to learn more about learning employment skills when they are at school, not when they're out of school. Secondly, mental health issue that has been raised a lot, safety and security of our children and our young people in RBKC, enhanced summer programs and sports activities to make sure that they have been supported. And finally, the most important issue that came up time and time again during that meeting was free school meals for all young people, starting from primary to secondary to until they get to university. And that's universal. I believe they should be given that opportunity. So the question is, Madam Mayor, what happened to the government is levelling up project? That we have been promised for the last 4 years. What is the RBKC leadership doing, and why is it ignoring the ongoing inequality crisis in our beloved borough and to serve all our communities in Kensington and Chelsea, rather than those they just want to hear from. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. In accordance with standing orders, I rule that the order of the business shall as printed in the agenda. Item 9. I now invite Councillor Taylor-Smith to propose the reception of the municipal timetable 2024-25 to December 2025. Councillor Taylor-Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I beg to move.
And I beg to second. Thank
you. I now invite Councillor Taylor-Smith to speak to the report. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm not paying attention, sorry.
So, just responding, I'm going to say, obviously, the report's been tabled, and let us all be ready for the large number of emails inviting us to meetings. Thank you.
Does Council agree to adopt the additions to the municipal timetable for May 2024 to December 2025, recommendation 3 on page 25 of the main agenda pack? The recommendation is agreed. Item 10, ratios and appointments to committees. The appointments sheet has been circulated in the supplementary agenda pack. I call upon Councillors Lowry, Wade, and Denko to move the nomination standing in their names. Councillor Lowry to move the nomination.
I move the nominations standing in my name.
Councillor Wade.
Yes.
Councillor Denko.
I move the nomination standing in my name.
Does Council agree to note the political balance and agree the ratios and appointments as set out in paragraph 3.1 to 3.3 on page 36 and 37 of the main agenda pack, and Appendix B on pages 251 to 254 of the supplementary papers pack, and to note that the Labour group has given up a seat on Administration Committee to the Lib Dems and retained 2 seats on Investment Committee.
Madam Mayor,
yes, Councillor Thalasitis.
Yeah, I appreciate that we're not voting on membership, but can I note there's an error on the list of the Administration Committee membership. Janet Evans is listed, but Joanna Gardner sits on the committee. So can I just draw councils to have that corrected for minutes?
Thank you. Noted. The recommendations are agreed. Item 11, reports from the leadership team. Councillor Thalasitis, you have a request under standing order.
Yes, Madam Mayor, in accordance with Standing Order 42, I wish to move that Standing Order 30 be suspended this evening to allow Councillor Ali and I to have up to 10 minutes each for our speeches.
Is that seconded?
I second the proposal.
Is that agreed? We turn now to agenda item 11I, revenue budget, capital program and council tax for 24-25, pages 39 to 155 of the agenda pack. As in previous years, we will debate the housing revenue account and its business plan separately. The order will be Councillor Thalasitis and Councillor Ali will make the budget speeches. The Labour amendments to the revenue budget and capital programme will then be moved and seconded. There will be then a general debate on the revenue budget and capital programme and council tax. Councillor Lowry will sum up on the Labour amendments. Councillor Thalasitis will then make closing remarks before the final recorded votes on the amendment and then the recommendations. We shall be using the electronic voting system. I therefore call upon the Deputy Leader to move formally the reception of the reports on pages 39 to 155 of the agenda pack, and Councillor Thalasitis to second. Councillor Taylor-Smith to move.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to move.
Councillor Thalasitis to second.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to second.
I call Councillor Thalasitis to make his budget speech.
Madam Mayor, thank you for giving me the opportunity tonight to present a robust and balanced budget to colleagues. Thank you also to colleagues in the leadership team either side of me and the budget working group for your contributions to the report. And thank you also to officers, in particular Mike and Lisa, for the work that you have done to manage a very difficult financial context. It's truly a team effort. Madam Mayor, many positive changes have taken place across the borough over the past year. Kensington Memorial Park is getting a net zero makeover, and I had the pleasure to visit with Councillor Will before Christmas. Ward blitzes have taken place in almost every ward, with record street enforcement notices dished out this month and graffiti being tackled on every corner, thanks to Councillor Kamali. And award-winning social homes are at Kelso Cochrane House and Hewer Street, which I saw with Councillor McVeigh last summer. This is a council that is determined to become the best for a borough that's greener, safer and fairer, especially in the light of Grenfell, which so vividly came into view again during Testimony Week. Madam Mayor, many changes have also taken place at Kensington Town Hall this year. This includes not only a new leader of the local Labour group, the third in just 5 years, but also a transformation programme on the opposition benches that has delivered a 33% reduction in headcount over the past 12 months. Bravo, we can learn a lot from you. Madam Mayor, they say that a week is a long time in politics, but my goodness, what a year it has been. And I have seen, alongside Councillor Taylor-Smith, how rising construction costs mean that we must give all the more credit to our officers charged with the ever more difficult task of delivering vital and important works on our estates. I've also seen with Councillor Campbell how rising social care costs are making it harder, ever harder in fact, to deliver essential and outstanding services at sites like St Mark's Road. I have also seen, as all of you in this chamber will have done, how rising bills and high inflation are putting ever greater pressure on residents' finances. This is why not only must we continue to make the tough decisions necessary to deliver on the foundational learnings of the Grenfell tragedy, to deliver safe, secure and affordable homes on our existing estates and to build new homes, but also to continue to support people with the cost of living, as we have done for some years. We have one of London's most generous council tax relief schemes, totalling £14 million a year.
Councillor Taylor-Seated, sorry to break up your flow. Would you mind speaking in the microphone a bit, please? So sorry.
We have one of London's most generous council tax relief schemes, £14 million and a £100 cost of living rebate for 16,500 households across the borough. This is targeted and important support for those that really need it. However, there are also tough choices coming, and it's no good to pretend that we don't have to make savings, as the shadow budget does again. That way, is this not working? Okay, maybe the mic's broken. Okay, I will step in for Councillor Will only momentarily. I was going on to say that we have tough choices to make and that we can't duck those choices as the shadow budget does, because that way lies ruin. And we can just ask the last Labour councillor to leave Birmingham and please dim the streetlights. Or we can ask Nottingham, or we can ask Croydon. There is a pattern. Things are getting harder. It's our responsibility to be honest with residents about that, and it is our job to manage our finances with competence and with care. That's why we have taken the difficult decision to raise our council tax by 2.99% and the adult social care precept by 2%. That means less than £1 per household per week for Band D households. This modest increase helps us protect and enhance our core services like twice-weekly bin collections, our good and outstanding schools and our beautiful parks. This is a competent council and there is money set aside to modernise our services and to achieve savings. For example, Councillor Folkes' team has opened Kensington Queen's Mill, which provides an outstanding education and has resulted in overall reductions in spending on SEN transport. For example, Councillor Rendell's team have delivered amazing services and also reduced agency spend by 56% over the past 2 years. For example, Councillor Addenbrook's team has pursued action to make Earls Court safer, as we heard a bit about already this evening, whilst MOPAC dithers over the future of the Notting Hill Police Station.
And this is also a caring council. I have spent time with the Budget Working Group, whose thoughtful recommendations have influenced our work in this report, and I've taken notes of the budget consultation, which recorded record high engagement for cost of living. 1,400 people responded, and there was 97% support for our package. Madam Mayor, as mentioned, I recently attended Testimony Week. This was one of the hardest things I've done as a councillor. It was a privilege to be there, but it was also harrowing. I want our budget to respond directly to the challenge set by the bereaved and survivors for us to change and to get there faster. Budgets are often spreadsheets, facts, and figures, but really they're about people. For example, some of our children, where we're investing £3.5 million to make council-run schools net zero, and we're exploring an aspiration to deliver a bursary scheme for those people going on to access higher education. And for families and adults, our £1.65 million on cost of living support to money, as well as money for supported housing at places like Lots Road. And also for our older generations, with our £10 million of social care funding in the pipeline today for places like Kingsbridge Road, as well as works that we're going to undertake at Maxilla. At every step of life, the local authority, Kensington and Chelsea Council, is here to help. We're focusing on the changes and projects that really matter to our residents and to our communities and respond to some of the inequalities that we hear about in the Chamber every 6 weeks. Madam Mayor, I believe in what we're doing here, and I know colleagues will as well. Our budget is a fair budget, a balanced budget, a competent budget, and a conservative budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ali, you have 10 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. May I begin with the budget or the amendment that we have? I think it speaks to the truth and it speaks to the residents of our borough, RBKC. We know exactly what the Conservative Party has been doing and what they're trying to do at this budget. But let me start first of all thanking the officers who has been really amazing and working with, not just with me as the leader of the Labour group, but also with our fellow councillors and spokespersons for different areas. So thank you, officers, for your support, especially Lisa and Liam and everyone else who supported our fellow councillors to do what they had to do. The Labour group budget and the amendment, we will hopefully get our own budget in 2026 when the time comes. But for the time being, our amendment, Madam Mayor, is balanced, it's right, and it really responds to the need of our community. Madam Mayor, if I may to start with what is not in our budget and why we left that very important point. The free school meals. We always had it before. We raised with the council the budget, but I really want to take this opportunity to thank the hard-working London Mayor Sadiq Khan, who increased one more year again to free school meals for all children, and that is a very, very important, unlike any other leader in London that we've seen the mayor. So thank you, Mayor Sadiq Khan, for increasing the school meals for children, and where our children, nearly quarter of our primary school kids in RBKC are in need of school meals. So thank you, Mayor Sadiq Khan, and may well be re-elected again. So that is one point to Mayor Sadiq Khan. The second point, Madam, the issues that I've mentioned earlier, inequality, the Conservatives have tried to actually cut what's most important to our residents and to make sure that they cut it like £250,000 from adults and social care. How can you, when the inequality in our borough, it's really struggling, how can you cut and not serve the community that are most in need? That, for example, there is huge disparities in our borough from, let's say, living standards and life expectancy. When one talks about health, we always talk about the life expectancy, how long the person lives, how active the person is, the health choice, the lifestyle, everything will contribute to the life expectancy. So in our borough, there's huge disparity on that. Nearly 15 to 17 years in the gap for life expectancy in our residents, depending on the ward that they live. For example, if I were to give an example for that, the gaps between it's adopting the geographical perspective. Let's say females in Nottingdale, where sadly Grenfell tragedy happened. If you live in that ward, you've got and you're a female, you've got 15 years less in your neighbouring ward, which is just a ward, just a ward to the south, or one ward to the south, to the Holland ward, and that's 15 years, 0.3 miles away from there. And if you're a male, for example, living in the same ward in Nottingdale, compared to a male living in Courtfield, you have life expectancy of 17 years difference. This budget, the Conservatives are now proposing, it's not really dealing with that issue. They completely let some of the wards completely left out. And when you're elected, Madam Mayor, one is responsible for making sure that the whole borough as a unit will be supported, not just one communities. If I were to go to the housing cuts that they're also doing, the family and children, for example, they're cutting 300,000 from family and children and support. With that, Madam Mayor, think about the issues that we have in a local, which I've mentioned earlier, talking about the housing inequalities. And if we were to talk on housing inequalities, the housing availability in our borough is 73%, which is the worst compared to all London boroughs, which is 46.4. And if we were talking about the housing delivery in our borough in Kensington and Chelsea, it's again worst compared to all London boroughs, which delivers 132. Is that a fair economy, fair budget? Of course not. Talking about the inequality, Madam Mayor, the economic inequality in our borough, 1 in 5 in RBKC, Kensington and Chelsea neighbourhoods, among 20 most income deprived in England and Wales. Why is that? Because of the unemployment in our borough is higher than compared to the London average. According to the Office of Financial Statistics, ONS, it says in February report 2022, our borough has the highest unemployment rate, 4.9, which is actually more than the average, higher than the average in London. What is the council leadership doing? Why this budget is not referring to the real issues of our communities and our residents in need? 4.4, and compared to that, England rates. England is in general, which will be seen when you think of Kensington and Chelsea, one thinks about it, wealth, prosperous borough in the whole country. But England average is actually lower than that. It's 3.5 in terms of supported economy and the supported local communities. Then again, this budget is not dealing with. In contrast to that, Kensington and Chelsea Labour group of councillors, we are now proposing to support the local communities, to make use of voluntary organizations that are supporting local communities to give them a chance to start their own businesses, to work with the local voluntary organizations so that the voluntary organizations do not rely on grants from the council or from anyone else. We have to work with the local communities to make sure that everyone in Kensington and Chelsea, where you are the north or the south or everywhere the centre in the borough, to get that economic prosperity for all our residents. In the last 4 years, Madam Mayor, the number of people claiming in-work benefit reflecting to the poverty has significantly increased year after year. What more this Conservative leadership do want to hear from the staggering in our local economy, and the local people need a budget that speaks to the truth. Sadly, to finish off with this point in terms of the economy, the most deprived area in London is in Kensington and Chelsea Goulburn ward. How can we say we're proud of the budget that we're setting when we have the lowest, the most deprived, the poorest ward in the country, in London for that matter? That is not reality, and that is really speaking to maybe another planet rather than just speaking to the truth. So our budget is based, our amendment is based on reality to support wards in Goulburn, support wards in Chelsea Riverside, from the north to the south to the centre of the borough, and that is what we need. We need a real leadership, not just words and clubbing each other when the time comes. And Madam Mayor, to finish off with this point, if one is setting the budget, one has to think about the local economy, one has to think about the inequality, one has to think about the housing, and one has to think about the health and safety of the next generation. And the amendment that we have made, the savings that we have to make, it's not an easy option, but we cannot and we will not allow this council to cut services that are dear to our communities, whether it's housing or local communities, and whether it's especially helping the children who we want to be taking our places in the future to be the leaders of RBKC, to be the leaders of London, and to be the leaders of the council. And that is the budget that we will put forward. And we would like to the Conservative majority to once and for all, perhaps this time, to look the other way and accept our amendment. I've finished, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. We now move to the Labour amendments, which are on pages 255 and 276 of the supplementary pack. Will Councillor Ali please move formally, and Councillor Lowry second the amendment? Councillor Lowry to move. Councillor Ali to move.
Yes, I beg to move.
And Councillor Lowry.
I beg to second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. We now move to a general discussion about the budget. Members are advised that they should not restrict their comments to revenue budget items, as we are taking revenue, capital and council tax together. I now invite any members who indicate to speak for up to 5 minutes each and no more, as quite a few have already indicated to me that they want to take part. Please, please, please do not overrun your time. Councillors who have indicated that they wish to speak. Councillor Josh Randall, shall we start with you? Oh, sorry.
One quick, to make your life a bit easier, Madam Mayor, I had sent an email yesterday quickly changing the order of Labour speakers on your list, and I don't know if it reached you. Claire Simmons will not speak in this debate, and instead Toby Benton will move up, and Portia will be our second speaker, and Abdullahi our third. It's in, I don't know.
Yes, I have it.
You've
Thank
got
you.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, that's very kind. Okay, Councillor Randall, let's go.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm really pleased, Madam Mayor, to introduce my portfolio's budget for this year, which is, I'm really impressed to say, a balanced and robust budget. We're spending £76 million this year, Madam Mayor, on our adult social care and £23 million on our public health. And this is to tackle our communities and our most deprived communities, which Councillor Ali referred to, but also help our residents that need it the most. So we are providing great services to our borough residents, not just in their homes, but from other services that we provide, but also working directly with our partners to provide great health outcomes the best way we possibly can, Madam Mayor. Now, I just wanted to refer to, Madam Mayor, the Labour amendments for adult social care, which I do disagree with, Madam Mayor, because we are still managing to provide, I said, a balanced and robust budget. Now, it's very interesting what Labour are trying to say, that's trying to accuse us of, not performing our duties in regards to adults and the most vulnerable. But, Madam Mayor, I disagree. Just looking at Labour's budget, so if you look at their proposals for ASC, this is how they're going to pay for it. From the Budget Stabilisation Reserve. From the Budget Stabilisation Reserve. From the Budget Stabilisation Reserve. Consistent. Very consistent, Madam Mayor. Need I go on? And I must admit, Madam Mayor, looking at the budget, it says, although the budget proposals are balanced, this is via significant use of reserves. Now, I'm not sure if Labour have actually read the Local Government Finance Act, but the duty in that is to have a balanced budget, which this council has, but also a robust budget, which this Labour group didn't seem to get the memo for. So if you're borrowing from reserves, that is not a robust budget. It may be balanced, but it's not robust. Now, I understand what Councillor Ali is saying and trying to say that perhaps we are not performing the best duties we have for adult social care, but I said, again, I disagree. We are making our services more efficient, but not really to impacting our communities. Now, if I was to listen to Labour and see what their budget's reserves were, they may go the way of other councils in the country, run by Labour and indeed the Lib Dems. So let's look at this. Birmingham City Council, bankrupt, the biggest council in the Europe, Madam Mayor. £760 million they had to pay for their bad decisions around their pay equality. Croydon Council, the third Section 114 notice in 2 years when they were Labour's. We won because of Labour's mismanagement and that, Madam Mayor, with debts of £1.3 billion. I mean, if we had this, if we followed this, we wouldn't be a very good fiscal council, we wouldn't balance our books, we wouldn't do the best for our residents. This is the reasons that we're under. Nottingham Council, Robin Hood Energy, bankrupted that council. Why are councillors investing in an energy company? I have no idea. Slough Council quadrupled its debt, Madam Mayor, from 180 million to 766 million. Again, another Labour council. If we took their budget proposals here, we'd be in the same position. Woking Council, Madam Mayor, which is the most interesting one, which is actually Lib Dem run. It issued a Section 114 notice, which is effective bankruptcy, because it invested in a shopping centre. And the biggest shock of all, it invested in the cutlery services for a 23-storey Hilton hotel. Now, we don't do that here in Kensington and Chelsea, Madam Mayor. This is why, and in addition to the adult social care budget, which I said is great and reasonable and very balanced and robust, if we were to rely on these reserves, we would be in the position of these councils, doing our worst disservice for our residents, doing the worst disservice for the people who pay their council tax, and we'd be absolutely derelicting our duty for a fiscal, responsible, conservative borough. So I commend my particular portfolio's budget to the Chamber, and as the rest of the council, and I hope everyone will be able to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pascal, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Budget Working Group is cross-party, so thank you to Councillors Simmons and Wade, together with Graham, Idris, Bennett and Wheel. This year it worked with 4 select committees and the OSC. Thus it involved directly in public discussion more than half the councillors that are in this chamber at the moment, in what has up until now been rather a minority sport. Thank you to officers from all business groups for your support, in particular to Liz Taylor in Finance team and Jackie Hurd's Scrutiny team. Finance officers have been warning for 2 years that 25/6 will require structural change, especially in the light of the Council's ambition to become the best. Indeed, the emerging picture for 23/4, quarter 3, emphasises pressures, particularly in temporary accommodation, and the likely overspend at the end of the budget year. It is heartening that at last year's recommendations of the Budget Working Group were all accepted by the leadership team, and more than half have been implemented, including those that have been implemented in-year financial review, better use of IT, establishing Capital Programme Office, learnings from the operation of the Grenfell Dedicated Service Team, project management of the Carbon Net Zero investment, review of the Adult Social Care Better Care Fund, and monitoring of implementation of the 0 to 5-year-old strategy, and a review of the VCS commissioning. This year, we have made 18 recommendations and await the leadership team's detailed response. The overarching recommendation is that a strategy for transforming the culture and business management of the council operations needs to be in place by this March. Implementing this strategy over the next 6 months would enable budget preparation for all business groups, including the HRA, which tends to usually run on a different timescale, to start in September, with adequate time for leadership team policy decisions and also for scrutiny before the Christmas break. I know that central government will issue Red Book and other things after Christmas, but they should be amendments to budgets rather than part of the essential preparation. Other recommendations include working on temporary accommodation, financial reporting during the year, spend to save outcomes, not just spend to save, but the outcomes. North Kensington Social Justice Archive, partnership working including with the NHS and CNWL, management of our infrastructure, and Carbon Net Zero 2030. The established processes for salami-sliced savings and time-shifting projects will on their own eventually only lead to reduced service we can offer to residents. There is good news on the transformations front. Several areas have already started. Street enforcement team, Power BI, family hubs, including housing and NHS, 0 to 5 years co-working with primaries, early SEN and EAL intervention, addressing complex hospital discharge. The Budget Working Group has not had the opportunity to review the opposition's alternative budget. It represents some differences in political policy priorities which are not the remit of scrutiny. However, I note the substantive comment from the Director of Finance that whilst it's balanced within the year, the use of reserves to achieve this is not as sustainable thereafter. In summary, 23-24 quarter 3 numbers indicate a likely budget overspend. Budget Working Group see the 24-25 budget is technically sound and technically soundly constructed, balanced with possibly over-optimistic assumptions on assumptions on income, with prudent provisions alongside those, aiming together to not further draw down on the Council's depleted reserves. The Budget Working Group looks forward to the LT response and recommendations. SIP for Code on budget preparation puts this in more formal terms, but if you take the way we've looked at it and the way they look at it, translated through Google, it adds up to the phrase that it adds up. So the budget for this forthcoming year, 24-25, makes sense. The managing of it will prove more difficult than the making of the budget. Even without adverse events, national policy impacts 25-26 is now the challenge, needing timely translations to enable the ambition to become the best council. I commend the Budget Working Group's 5-page report, which may look a bit slim compared with some reports the Council has, but it has succinct appendices and copious, I think up to about 500 or 600 pages of source material via e-links. Please email any comments, questions to me with a copy to Jackie Hurd. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Benton, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, I'd like to start by saying, well, I'm obviously a newbie to a lot of this stuff, but I'm a pretty quick study. And that means that I tend to ask pretty stupid questions. But I found that that's got me some pretty revealing answers, or at least some pretty revealing lack of answers when I dig into it. There are certainly things I welcome in this in the Tory budget. But to be honest, when it comes to family services, I am seeing a lot of the same old breeze about restructuring, reorganising, efficiency, integration, which I've heard my entire life while looking at outcomes just get worse. I will circle back to consultation, but I would actually like to echo the Council's thanks to the 37 members of the public who have participated in this clearly extensive consultation. And of course, I applaud our commitment to look after children, care leavers, and other young people with protected characteristics. I mean, I can't help but wonder if these vaunted lower numbers of children in need of support is at least partly a function of our tendency to shove them into other boroughs. But a few things I'd like to flag. One is staffing. Cumulatively, correct me if I'm completely wrong about this, but it's 620k. We're looking at cumulatively with savings. Now, this is the kind of thing which tells me that the Tories just don't get the kind of casework we do. Like, you don't see the human misery that results from your policies every day. The idea that we can leave these posts open, we can somehow restructure, we can merge departments together in the name of efficiency, when what we actually need is more staff. That tells me that you don't see what we see every day, which is there are people who have done everything they're meant to do. They're banging their head against the wall every day to get their children looked after, to get housing, they have dependents. And there simply is no recourse. And the kind of, let's politely say, mistakes that we end up making are a direct function of just, we don't have the staff, we don't have the briefs that are precise enough. That troubles me. So, for example, integrating existing services into adolescent services, again, we have yet to see how that pays off. My suspicion is it won't. But to just immediately call that a saving, or sorry, a cut, seems egregious to me. Again, I'm a newbie, but I haven't had a satisfactory answer when I've asked about this. Olive House, okay, it's going from completely supported facility to semi-independent support for older children. But doesn't that still mean a net loss of support staff, a net loss of actual services being provided, because they got to go somewhere? These kinds of things seem very circular to me. But I'll use my last minute in a bit to say something positive about Councillor Ellie's proposals, to fully fund school uniforms for people who need it, to restore funding for to make swimming for under-16s free, and these are significant costs to ordinary families. And if you lived, some of you do, in the north of the borough, I know that my neighbours, families that I speak to every day, these are significant costs for them. These really are, and it doesn't seem like that to a lot of us, but spending that money means a lot. We all know, actually, at least on paper, the struggles that people are facing at the moment. And we can eat that cost. We really can. That's what the budget shows. That's what our amendments show. You can actually eat that pretty easily. So, look at me, under 5 minutes for once. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Councillor Ali. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Evans, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, colleagues. I find the expression by Labour that nothing is done for the North really uncanny, because when I was deputy mayor, I visited so many amazing spaces in North Kensington, and I thought, why don't we have them in the south of the borough? So it's funny that. Thank you very much for giving me time to say that. And speaking of amazing spaces, that was the goal of the last 4 years, and we have been doing that in South Kensington as well now. I have to thank my colleagues for having allotted us money in the last budget to improve Bute Street, and now we are improving Gloucester Road, and we've been given 1.5 million for that. Now, that helps everyone. It helps mental health. It helps everyone in the borough, because I'm sure North Kensington parents are bringing their children to the museums. And the Gloucester Road tube station is being cleaned up. It's being restructured as far as the cement is being concerned. We are widening roads. We are making allotments because now the buses are bigger, so we've been working with TfL in order to make the roads more suitable and more safe. And I thank my colleagues for that. And I was just at Gloucester Road today and noticed what beautiful sculpture there is on the platform. So I hope that the outside surroundings which we are planning to do at the end of 2024, will match up to that and make it a wonderful place to welcome tourists as well as locals to the wonderful South Kensington. We did consult with the residents, and they were very happy about it, because we can also address the problem of the pigeons, which we have addressed here, and we can address the safety of older people in terms of being able to cross the roads. And I think the fact that we have done this, making this an amazing space, has opened up to solve many issues, and I thank the lead members for his help. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't be long, but I just wanted to call out a couple of things in my sort of scrutiny area within the environment, where despite having to make tough decisions and obviously present a robust and balanced budget, we are still investing in the areas that matter to our residents. And I just wanted to call out a couple of areas, including the 16.7 million on keeping our streets and highways clean. I think one of the things our residents in this borough value most. And another £230,000 of funding for tackling graffiti across the borough. Again, something we as councillors hear about regularly from our residents in terms of their top priorities. We're also investing £22 million in our highways and street scene improvements, and I think that recognises the fact that we are lucky to inherit such a beautiful built environment, such a fantastic borough, but we have to do our part in our generation to invest in it, to make our own improvements, and to improve our public realm for all our residents. So I'm delighted to see that in there. Another thing we have to invest in, and is our responsibility in this generation to invest in, is tackling climate change and our carbon net zero measures. And we've got over £20 million of carbon zero measures in there, including 4.7 million for our Green Fund and maintaining our parks and open spaces. Again, I think one of the most special things about this borough. So I think it's an excellent budget which makes hard choices, but does also invest in the future. And I'll just say, just very briefly, I mean, what a contrast to the proposed Labour budget. Colleagues have said it, but it goes straight to raiding the piggy bank, making another visit to the magic money tree, just millions and millions of pounds out of reserves. Even some of the small amounts of savings they do propose are nonsensical. They say £358 million for handing Leighton House over to the National Trust. But then just beneath that, it says the National Trust will only accept it if the property is financially self-supporting. So how are they going to make £358,000 of savings, but also hand over a property that's financially self-supporting? It just makes absolutely no sense. And I think the comment within the amendment sort of sums it up, that to fund ongoing revenue expenditure from reserves is not sustainable or advisable. I think that sort of sums up voting for Labour in Kensington and Chelsea. It's not sustainable or advisable. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Linda Wade, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jos, you didn't mention Woking Council declares bankruptcy with 1.2 billion deficit, which is the reason why it went Liberal Democrat. I just thought you'd like a little correction there, Jos. There are two areas within the budget that I'd like to concentrate on: housing and social investment, and the borough's response to the increase in older residents. Both share cross-departmental decision-making and strategic planning. We have an increase of 8.3% for residents over 65. We have an increase of 23% of residents over 75. We are an ageing borough with a declining trend in overall population. With the cost of living crisis, many more long-term residents are facing homelessness, living in unsuitable accommodation, or being priced out of their homes. But we have a shortage of independent living and extra care spaces available in the borough. At present, we have 108 residents in urgent need of homes who are over 65. Where is the forward planning on this in adult social care and housing? Where are the bed spaces in the borough for those with dementia and other long-term conditions? Is the present supply meeting need and projected needs? In the recent UCL study, it estimates that our number of dementia cases could increase to 42% higher by 2040. Are we planning for that? So where is the planning on how we can deliver accommodation within borough so essential family links can be retained without relying on placement out of borough or inexpensive commercial response to dementia and Alzheimer housing? As the borough, we need to develop a different type of response to the social affordable housing crisis. The cost of the borough to place residents that we have a duty of care for in temporary accommodation is apparently 11 million. That cannot be considered sustainable, let alone the unseen costs of poor health and well-being of waiting. We're also at the same time paying private landlords that fail to look after their properties. We need to invest and be creative about our housing. The social impact of the lack of affordable homes that are safe, warm and compliant is incalculable. So why are we not looking at developing mechanisms of joint working with buildings that are no longer viable, such as older hotels to deliver more homes. We cannot rely on our development areas to generate the supply that we need, which in the main focus on London living wage and not social rent homes. Why are we not working on a development of a policy to match fund RSL financial viability on voids to prevent the loss through sale and at the same time retain nomination rights? It must be asked why St Mungo's property on Cromwell Road is now going to be managed by Hammersmith and Fulham. Why has that happened? We need that accommodation and why can't we convert it into social rented accommodation of different sized units? This would have been an economy in the long run in a depressed housing market. I do realise that the housing and ageing are complex, but sometimes you have to spend to save, and both the shortage of social affordable housing, the aged conditions of some of our stock, and the projected increase in age and infirmity, the borough needs to develop strategies that are both creator and long-term. Therefore, there are many elements in the Labour budget which we like, but overall we'll not be able to, at this occasion, to be able to vote for your amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Hargreaves, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you. As a former member of the Audit and Transparency Committee has said on a few occasions, K&C do money well. Yeah. Having chaired the committee for nearly 2 years, I agree with this. And we're usually one of the first local authorities to have our accounts ready and presented for audit. And generally, we get a very positive response from our auditors to the final audited accounts. Doing money well starts with doing budgeting well. All local authorities have a responsibility to set a robust and balanced budget. And the proposed budget that we have presented to us this evening does exactly that. It tackles the challenges facing all local authorities for the coming year and presents a balanced and responsible budget. The council tax increase of 2.9% is fair and realistic. And combined with the support to residents outlined in para 5.11 and the council tax exemption policy for care leavers from 18 to 25, plus some of the other initiatives announced, recognises the current financial pressures that some of our residents are facing. This is, of course, in complete contrast to the Mayor of London's precept estimated to be 8.6% for Band D properties. Thank you, Mayor Khan. The reserve policy is clearly explained in the report, and I'm pleased to see in para 29.6 that DLUC have issued an initial capitalisation direction of 23.3 million, with a decision on the remaining 58.8 million expected by the end of the financial year. That hopefully means that the audited accounts which we are waiting to be finally signed off can be signed off when we get that decision. And this may be a technicality, but to us on the Audit and Transparency Committee, it is a very important point. Members will no doubt focus on specific areas of interest in their budget, but I am proud that as a borough, we have always sought to support the voluntary sector in the valuable work that these various organisations do in supporting our residents by providing a range of services. Across the council, we spend 22.4 million on supporting the sector, and this includes a voluntary sector support fund, and I'm pleased to see that this is protected with a 3-year funding strategy for those organisations in receipt of this fund. Like many councillors in the chamber, I am a fan of city living local life. I know that in my ward, Chelsea Riverside, we've been able to support a number of very worthwhile projects that otherwise would not have happened without this funding. And I'm pleased to see that this is protected for the next year. As a councillor from one of the most densely populated wards in the borough, we value our parks and green spaces. The council has already invested heavily in Westfield Park, Cremorne and Roper's Gardens, and we are currently undergoing a major redesign and replanting programme on Embankment Gardens. And I'm also pleased to see a further funding provided for this in the budget before us this evening. Borough-wide, the GRIE fund of £4.7 million helps us to maintain and enhance our parks and open spaces, and is added to even more by contributions from ENSO. So, Madam Mayor, I finish where I started, with the comment that K&C do money well. This budget very clearly shows how we are going to do that for the coming financial year. It is well crafted, and I would like to add my thanks to the leadership team and all the officers who put together this budget. An excellent budget from a council that does money well. Perhaps I might misquote the M&S food advert. This is not just budgeting, it's K&C budgeting. Madam Mayor, I commend this budget to the whole Chamber, and I will be voting for it this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McVeigh, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to comment on a few points from a housing perspective on the General Fund, and I'll talk about the HRA later. But as you'll see, a major part of this budget is temporary accommodation and the cost increase primarily from the use of hotels. And we're finding that we're having to rely on hotels because so many people are leaving, so many landlords are leaving the private rental sector. Our actual numbers in temporary accommodation haven't changed that much, but the cost of looking after them has. And so yesterday I went to visit one of our hotels in Fulham, where we have 22 households staying there, and we held a housing surgery there with Kojo, our Director of Housing. And what was really interesting was that every single individual case that came up is so unique and so different that it does take an awful lot of time for our officers to sort out each case. But again, what is clearly apparent is we cannot afford financially to keep people in hotels, and we cannot afford to keep them in hotels for themselves, because it's not a good outcome for anybody to be in a place where you can't call it your home and you can't do any cooking. So I've made it a priority of mine to reduce the number of residents in hotels. And hot off the press, thank you to Councillor Thalasisis for pointing this out to me. Today the government has announced an additional 1.4 million for homelessness prevention, and that's on top of the 5 million they have already committed to in the autumn statement. So I really welcome that, and thank you. And this will help us to continue our great work at preventing homelessness. And I would just like to let everyone, remind everyone here that our prevention of homelessness was the best in London last year. So well done to the team for that. And our prevention rates are consistently in the top 3 in London. So my second aspect is about our street sleepers. And I think you'd agree that as a caring council, supporting this cohort of residents is absolutely essential and completely the right thing to do. And on Monday night, I went out with our team, an incredible team from St Mungo's and also the police. We went out at 9 o'clock, from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. And between that time, we spoke to 7 people, all of whom the team knew really well. They knew all their details, apart from, sadly, one new young woman at South Ken who they hadn't come across before. And again, what struck me was our team's incredible kindness and patience with dealing with very, very difficult situations. And another bit of good news, I'm not surprised that DLUC have recognised our outreach team's performance and have asked our team to provide best practice for other London boroughs. So again, in Kensington Chelsea, I think we're really, really pleased about that. And my third aspect, I will crack on with this quickly, is one of fairness. And this covers tenancy fraud, where people are taking taxpayers' money and yet they think it's okay to rent out their flat or sublet it or put it in Airbnb, which is clearly not acceptable. We need every single property for those that actually need them. So in the budget, you'll notice we have a new team investigating tenancy fraud, and so far we have got back 74 bedrooms from this for people who really need it. So, and pursuing legal action where appropriate. Finally, and in another positive, our new homes programme is about to fulfil 184 homes. And so I please refer you to all look online at our video about our beautiful Acklam Road, and I know the Scrutiny Committee has visited as well. And 60% of these 32 homes are going to be social rent, so that's 20 homes.
And so that is brand new council flats, built by the council, built by a Conservative council for our residents.
Well done.
Thank you. Councillor Dencode.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I also thank you for being very clear on your high expectations of conduct in the chamber. Everyone's behaved beautifully tonight, especially with the new standing orders now in place. And quite right too, we're confident that this will be meted out equally between all political groups. What a disappointment that these high expectations have been maybe swerved a little by the Mayor. And I quote, the leaders or finance leader of each party group will be expected to speak on the council's annual budget, which we are, and to be granted equal time, which we're not. The expectation is for us to speak, which we will, but the expectation on the grant to give us equal time is not to be upheld, noted. We have carefully read the Labour Group amendments, and given the number of rather familiar legacy proposals and modest new amendments, on the whole, the Independent Group are likely to support them. However, we do have some comments of our own. I 100% agree with what Councillor Wade has just been saying on the increase in costs and pressures on adult social care. It is hardly a surprise. Demographic change is clearly tracked by the ONS. Where are the Council's detailed 2021 census analyses per ward? I note our spending on agency staff continues unabated year by year, costing us £15 to £16 million annually to replace staff shortages. What is this problem with staff retention? This includes a whopping £2 million on family and children's services, excluding schools, and £1.6 million on social care, and I believe that a lot of that is down to home care because they can't retain home care workers. We cannot find any additional services to support the increase in children struggling with mental health issues, which is a legacy issue and we must deal with because they're going to be stuck with a lifetime of issues if we don't help them now when they're at school. Madam Mayor, the Executive Directorate is getting very top-heavy. How many directors will we have in total once 4 new ones have been added? At last count, we had 3 times more than Hammersmith and Fulham or Westminster. What are they for? They're delivering the council plan, which has only become necessary due to the near 7-year failure of the Grenfell Council to improve. Local people are still asking, where has the money gone? 4 reports on Grenfell funding from Audit and Transparency have revealed nothing that was asked, and that's very clever, and no disrespect to the officers who spent many hours putting them together. I note that our continued poor record of delivering capital projects has been on for many years, on time and on budget, has led to delays such that our pipeline for social housing has been halted, as they're costing far more than they were budgeted 5 years ago. Before I turn to our use of reserves, I'd like to comment briefly on the Council's support for a failing business over the past 6 years. Yes, Madam Mayor, free office space, free storage units, free use of a large chunk of our favourite park is still being awarded to Opera Holland Park, which never has and never will break even or make a profit, and has failed to provide its accounts to the Council, thereby succeeding in catching yet another year of freebies. Why? So our reserves. Finally, we're using the budget stabilisation reserve to stabilise the budget, which is what it was for. Previously, we were told we couldn't. But when the situation for so many of our residents is so dire, we need to see more help. Will the COVID-19 cost of living reserve really be used between now and 2027 to address the problems of undernourished children suffering from Victorian diseases, warm up the homes of our elders, support low-income working families and those unable to work, struggling to pay their bills and feed their children, because frankly, we have a poor record of reaching out to those most in need. And I say once again, the detailed ward-by-ward analysis that we're still waiting for nearly 3 years after the census could help us track this, and yet we wait. Our neighbouring councils have updated this vital information. Why not us? I've asked for it numerous times. All in all, Madam Mayor, this budget proves once again what we've always known. The Council is better at looking after money than people, and how proud some people are of that. While the government ensures that our wealthier neighbours are kept happy, our sick are sicker, the health and well-being of our children is declining, and our poor are getting poorer. There is no excuse for this. We are a borough split by inequality, and we have learned no lessons after Grenfell. Saving money does not save lives.
Thank you. Councillor Foulkes, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with a lot of what Councillor Ali said about equality and about children. And this is why the vision for our children and our families services department here is to deliver the most excellent services that enable all our children and young people to really reach their full potential, and especially those children and young people who are most vulnerable. So that is the best way to solve equality, is to start from the base, that right from the beginning we're supporting people to reach that full potential. And I think we're doing that really well in this borough. We have the best and most good and outstanding schools in the country. That's number one tick for a great start for our children's lives. We have the highest uptake in free school places for 2, 3 and 4-year-olds. Again, we really believe in giving people the best early start in our fantastic nurseries and play and stay places. So I think we are doing that very well indeed. And what's even more surprising is that we're doing that on a balanced budget that isn't dependent on the budget stabilisation reserve, which seems to be doing all the heavy lifting in the Labour budget in the children's department. So we're managing very well by reducing our costs so that we can spend more money on our young people by delivering better services with fewer people. So I just want to remind you all here of some of the extraordinary things that we do manage to deliver for our children, because I think we do a great job and we're continuing to delivering them despite some of the budget pressures that we have now and are going to come forward in the next years. So we're continuing to fund the Grenfell Education Fund. We had 3,500 pupils who took part in our holiday and activity programme, which included activities and meals over the holiday programme, and we worked with 35 different voluntary sector providers in doing that. From the Household Support Fund, we spent nearly £2 million on £4 food vouchers for the 4,600 free school meal eligible pupils. And just to pick you up on the free school meals, I mean, it's a lovely idea that you want to fund every child, but this is 4,600 pupils who are eligible for free school meals. To fund all the children above that will cost you about another £1 million, which is probably why you didn't put it in the budget. Because to put it in the budget, you would have to have no youth services at all. So, you know, these are the difficult choices we have to make when we're setting our budgets here. So the other things we're doing, we're making our schools greener. As you know, we've spent £8 million in putting in heat source, ground source heat source pumps, putting in insulation, and actually physically greening with more hedges and things, which is fantastic, and teaching our children how important it is that we are addressing climate change. With the worrying rise in SEND, Councillor Will had the foresight to invest in Queensmill School, a world-class special school, which is so successful that we'll soon be opening 2 new satellites for it. But as well as providing the required support for our most vulnerable children, it's also providing huge savings in our transport costs. And as for our youth service, we spend more on our youth services. Everyone keeps saying we have nothing for children, but we really do have youth services everywhere. And these come out of non-statutory funding, and I repeat that. So this is where we have to juggle our money. So our 49.5 million that we spend from our family, children and services, I think we spend exceptionally well, and we really support our family and young children in this borough very well. So I want to commend the excellent officers that I work with, because although the school's funding comes from a direct school grant, some of the schools work so well because we have such brilliant officers supporting them all the time, and that shouldn't be lost in all the hard work that they do. So thank you very much, officers, for all that you do for our family and children's services, and I support our budget.
Thank you. Councillor Hammond, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and it's an honour to follow my friend Councillor Folkes, who's doing great work in her portfolio. And I'd also like to congratulate Councillor Thalasitis on his balanced budget and thank the officers for their amazing amount of work that they've put into it once again. My remarks this evening will be confined to housing matters from my perspective on the Housing Community Select Committee. Inevitably, I might possibly stray over into some HRA matters in this speech, but my main subject is the General Fund, and I think it's better to put it all together than give you the benefit of two speeches this evening. The Council has made tremendous progress over the last 6 years that I've been here on housing matters, and despite the current challenges on subjects such as temporary accommodation that Councillor McVeigh referred to earlier. We did inherit a poison chalice from the failed tenant management organisation, £350 million backlog of work that needed to be done. And I do commend the excellent work that has been done and is being done firstly under Councillor Taylor-Smith and now under Councillor McVeigh to work through that. And this budget finances the next step forwards in this very expensive programme. If the programme has to proceed perhaps a bit slower because of the increased cost of borrowing, well, so be it, but it's still progressing forward, and achievements are being made every day on this programme. I'd like to commend the efficient management of the HRA budget, which has led to a modest underspend this year, which can then be transferred into the capital budget to help the programme along. And imaginative ideas that have been put forward, like selling expensive and valuable street properties where they don't provide any special needs, and replacing them on a one-for-one basis with estate houses when they become available, and spending the balance on the capital programme. I think that those kind of imaginative ideas do need to be taken up in order to move us forward. Turning now to the New Homes programme, we've made again fantastic progress, and I was really honoured to be invited to the opening of Hewer Street a few weeks ago, and it's really a magnificent new building. And it's great to see Kelso Cochrane House and Acklam Road nearly ready for occupation, and I drove past the Bulbury Road site this afternoon, and again there's plenty of work going on there. So this is a tremendous programme. Yes, I understand that the Phase 3, or some of the Phase 3 sites are stalled because of the increased cost of borrowing and the small size of some of these houses. But I do commend the Council to have a look at the opportunity areas as a means of reaching the 600 target. And I do recognise that Council has yet to get its planning permission, or indeed its first formal hearing before the Planning Committee, and that the Earls Court site has yet to even have a planning application put in. But these sites, in my view, do present an opportunity potentially to buy council property off-plan at better value for money than building out some of our really small sites in Phase 3, and we could perhaps look at selling some of that land to finance buying off-plan in the opportunity areas. And I would certainly rather our future social housing is managed in those areas is managed by the council than by some of the registered providers that I won't name here, because I know our housing management does a really fantastic job. So overall, it's a great budget. I commend it to the Chamber, and particularly in respect of the housing elements of it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thaxter, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say destitution and hardship cannot be part of a decent society. Adult and social care services is one of the most important services in the borough. Home care provision should be kept within the current system, allowing provisions for staff to be trained and upskilled with scope for volunteering training. RBKC should introduce a standard work contract and improve training opportunities to social care staff. This will improve the social care workforce in the long run. We propose that the council introduce a standard care work contract with the option for every care worker to move into a new contract. The new contract should include all hours on duty, sick pay, travel time, contracted hours, and employer-contributed pension. Introducing direct payments for vulnerable residents in the council may seem like an appealing idea on the surface, as it offers a sense of empowerment and autonomy. However, upon closer examination, there are significant reasons why a local authority should refrain from implementing such a system. One, the impact on equality. Direct payment causes exacerbating existing inequality among vulnerable residents. Not all individuals have the same level of financial literacy or capacity to manage their finances. Those who are already marginalized and disadvantaged may suffer to navigate the complexities of handling direct payments effectively. This could widen the gap between the most vulnerable and the most financially capable residents. Cost of implementation. The setup costs of implementing direct payments can be substantial. This includes investments in administrative infrastructure, staff training, and ongoing systems training to ensure compliance and accountability. These costs can divert resources away from essential services and support mechanisms for vulnerable residents. Risk to vulnerable individuals. For individuals with vulnerabilities, that impedes their ability to manage money independently. Direct payments pose significant risks. These risks include financial exploitation, mismanagement of funds, and increased vulnerability to scams and fraud. Within adequate safeguarding and sufficient and support mechanism in place, vulnerable residents may find themselves in precarious situation that compromises their well-being. I mean, I've been also looking at some studies that shows that this is a no-go zone. A study published in the Journal from Social Policies and Society found that the introduction of direct payments in social care services leads to increased disparities in access and outcome among vulnerable groups, particularly those with disabilities or mental health conditions. Research by the John Roan III Foundation highlights the importance of tailored support mechanism in ensuring the effectiveness implementation for direct payments for vulnerable individuals within sufficient support structure in place. There is a heightened risk of negative outcomes, including financial hardship and social isolation. Case studies from local authorities that have implemented direct payment schemes underscore the challenges and complexity involved, including issues related to financial management, safeguarding, and access to services. In conclusion, while the concept of direct payment may seem appealing in theory, the potential negative impact on equality cost and the well-being of vulnerable residents outweighs the perceived benefits. Instead of pursuing direct payments, the local authority should focus on strengthening existing support system, investing in targeted interventions, and prioritizing the need for the most vulnerable members of our community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Idris, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have 2 points that I would like to address or speak to. But still is going to be a very brief budget. I mean, a very brief speech. First of all, I allude to Councillor Ali's earlier remark about living in a different planet. I get the feeling the party opposite is actually occupying a different planet. Our vision in this borough is to deliver excellence in education, care, and and that's what we do. Here I'm speaking on with my hat as a scrutiny chair. That's why our children's services overall are high performing in both national and local performance measures. We can easily see it in our schools. Most of our schools are marked good or outstanding by Ofsted. So there is no qualms there in leveling up via education. We can also see it in our care services, youth offending services, special educational needs, and disability services. These all reflect the investment RBKC continues to make in early help and family support services. However, this investment is not just money and sound political policies. It is also people. It is those who daily carry out the work and implement these policies. It is the officers, the teachers, the social workers, the carers, the youth workers. It is all of you. Your hard work and dedication to achieving excellence is what keeps us a high-performing authority, and we thank you all for that. The committee raised concerns in a number of areas, but was assured they were addressed. We shall continue to keep an eye on and work together to maintain the high standard and top quality services families and children in the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea deserve and accustomed to. My other remark is on, it's not the capital budget, sorry, it's on a topic very close to my heart. Beecham Place is a street I truly love, because it reminds me of a time when life was simple and carefree. Before moving to the UK, my family used to annually visit London during summer school holidays. As I got older and was allowed to go out with friends and chaperoned, we used to go to Piccadilly Circus for the cinemas and the theaters, then rush to Beecham Place to eat, hang out, and watch celebrities and famous people go by. Back then, Beecham Place was a destination, a place to see and be seen. In my selection speech, I promised Brompton and Handstown residents that if selected and elected, I will sort out Beecham Place once and for all and bring it back to its former glory, to where it belongs and should be, a world-famous destination. Thanks to my good friend, Councillor Kamali, and a very willing and super engaged community and residents and business owners on the street, we are now at the consultation stage. And hopefully, in under 2 years, we should proudly unveil the famous street to its former glory again. I guess you can say I am super excited. It is no longer a dream, a wish, or an idea. It's a project, and it's actually happening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I am just noticing the time, and after doing some mental maths, we still have 9 speakers, so that's 45 minutes. Could I possibly trouble you all to cut it down to 2 minutes, please? Sharp. Thank you. So, Councillor Kamali, if you start, please. Thanks.
You've laid down the gauntlet, Madam Mayor. Thank you firstly to Johnny for once again balancing our books in such difficult times, and to officers for working so hard on this budget. We have before us a budget delivering for all residents of Kensington and Chelsea. In my areas especially, with waste, planning and highways, there are a number of projects and services which residents highly value and rightly expect them to be of a standard fit for a royal borough. I'm pleased to see, therefore, that ongoing funding for graffiti removal team and that our new jet washing service will remain at an enhanced level. coupled with the new electric buggies grabbing the bags that have been left out on the wrong days, we continue to keep our streets clean. Our new street enforcement team has already proved its worth, setting a new record by issuing more fines in February 2024 than in any month in council history. It is, however, not just in enforcement where we are investing. We are putting money into making sure our borough looks and feels amazing. Our Amazing Spaces initiative has already demonstrated successes at Chelsea Green, and with projects nearing completion on Bute Street and Hollywood Road, we look forward to this year's new projects, with Hogarth Road already agreed to start this summer, and hopefully with Kensington Park Road, Beaufort Street and Gloucester Road following towards the end of the year. We are also directing officer resource at making sure this council can move with the times, allowing double and triple glazing on listed buildings, solar panels to boot. And now we are even allowing mansards in certain areas to create new homes and gently densify London and RBKC. We've also launched fast-track planning to help unlock the complicated mess that planning sometimes can feel to our residents, making our services more efficient. I compare all the wonderful things this Conservative administration is delivering, and we've heard very many here tonight, with the offer made by the Labour Party. In my area, they suggest 12 million for the Ladbroke Grove step-free. We've already agreed to this. Tick. They're suggesting 360,000 for High Street Kensington's segregated cycle lane. This somewhat feels like déjà vu. Seemingly, they change leader more often than they change their ideas. Madam Mayor, I will personally help leaflet the residents of Kensington about this proposal. And Kasim, you pick the date and time and I'll help you get your message out there. Last line, Madam Mayor. Each year, residents can see the difference between an efficient and resident-focused Conservative administration and a Labour Party so racked by disunity they can barely fill a front bench. Residents want sensible decision-making, not playground politics, and it is for this reason that I commend our sound and pragmatic proposals to the Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor New, please. Councillor Burns, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to welcome the budget to the lead I want to welcome the budget that the lead member of Finance has set out. Although there are significant pressures in homelessness, temporary accommodation, as well as social care, I think the budget strikes the right balance of meeting the challenges whilst also keeping new investment a part of the plan, particularly in Chelsea Riverside. I am particularly interested in Lots Road, which continues to be the council's biggest land holding. We're in development with partnership with Mountainville, and I'm looking forward to seeing progress within the next 12 months. Over the past couple of years, there has been investment in Embankment Gardens, Roper's Gardens, and I'm very excited about Cremorne Wharf, and very much hope the leadership team will include a budget line for Cremorne Wharf when it's ready to be built out and brought forward, which I anticipate within the next 12 months. I also want to welcome the cost of living rebate which is being discussed tonight. There are parts of my ward that are less affluent than most of the borough. I have spent a lot of time in and around the World's End estate, and I know for many of those people and others in the ward, there are major problems with the cost of living. Whilst £100 won't solve the problem in one go, it will nevertheless be a great help over the next few months. I'm particularly pleased because I know other boroughs have not initiated similar cost of living support. So it's a great example of how Kensington and Chelsea is both competent and caring for its residents. So thank you for that, and thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Will, please.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. I will be succinct, not least, because I think the common sense of this budget speaks for itself. But I was late tonight because I was travelling back, and I was reading that one of the things a lot of councils will be looking to do is slashing their parks budget. And I am pleased to say that we're not going to be doing this, because we acknowledge how important green spaces are to our residents in the most densely populated borough in London. And actually, I think that goes to the equality points that Councillor Ali was making earlier, that ensuring that all residents have access to green spaces and well-maintained green spaces is really important. You've heard from colleagues how we've been improving them. We have plans for more at KMP, Tavistock and St Luke's, and most importantly of all, we will be creating this new park down in Lots Road, our most densely populated area of the borough, and that's going to be very important too. I want to thank Councillor Wade and Councillor Dent-Code actually for giving me the opportunity to just talk about our plans for the elderly and also our older children with SEN, or young adults with SEN. I completely agree with you. This is a group that is very important, we need to focus on, and in fact we are. So we will be building extra care down at Lots Road. We're creating extra provision for adults with learning difficulties at St Helens. We're also looking to buy Kingsbridge House for the same reason, and there's also another plan on board as well, which I can't talk to about more detail. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to say that we are well aware of this and wanting to do what we can for those residents. And finally, I just wanted to comment on the hard FM and soft FM reductions in the Labour budget. Apparently they know something about this that I don't, and they think they can get much, much more savings out of it. I would be delighted to talk to them about how they think they can do that. So please do come and speak to me. It would be, lovely to get your input on that. So finally, I want to say I do think this is a sensible budget. We know times ahead will be difficult. We do always try and do our best for those in need. I completely, for Councillor Dent-Code to say we're not aware of them, we don't help them, is just not right. But nor should we ever be complacent. There is always more work to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lane, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a budget which puts residents' priorities first. At a time when so many councils across the country are reducing rubbish collections, are reducing their street cleaning due to dire financial mismanagement, no prizes for guessing which party runs those councils, I'm delighted that we're in a strong financial position due to sound Conservative management of finances. And we can devote an extra £229,000 for street cleaning and graffiti removal on top of the money we already spend on our twice weekly bin collections, the gold standard in London. It's the council's focus on excellence in those core services that residents associate with local government that makes us special. And believe me, in Queensgate, clean streets is #1 on people's list of things to focus on. Now, on this issue, I'm afraid I refuse to listen to any trash talk from the opposition, and I would happily rubbish any claims that this council doesn't listen to its residents. This council spends its residents' money on what matters to them, and we're helped in that by our fantastic new street enforcement team out on the streets every day working hard. So I want to pay tribute to them as well. I think finally I want to touch on Labour's plan to drain the council's reserves for a spending splurge. I would only leave them with the wise words of one of our party's many former female prime ministers, which is that the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money.
Thank you. Councillor Adurian, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I shall be brief. As with Councillor Bennett and Councillor Kamali, I'm pleased to see the protection of the additional funding for street cleansing and graffiti removal. This has already produced some good results in Earls Court, with graffiti being removed much faster than before, and this does need to continue. I would also note the mention of potential savings from Crest. Now, while savings are of course always welcome, I would urge, in as much as is possible, that focus continues to be on the full implementation of that programme. This transformation is critical to making sure that we continue to deliver the level of service, level of enforcement that residents are rightly looking for, and to be able to continue responding effectively and proactively to resident reports. So we've already started seeing some good early results, again, as Councillor Kamali alluded to, and I look forward to continuing seeding service as it fully embeds and continues to develop. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Verboven, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And following on from what my colleague Councillor Wade mentioned, I would like to highlight a few other issues with this budget. It is actually falling short from promises made in the Council's own plan, which it only published last year. The Council said that it would encourage cycling. To make cycling an appealing option, we would need an appropriate infrastructure. No parent will let their child jump on a bike in this borough if there are no protected cycle lanes. What we therefore need is a coherent, comprehensive and integrated cycle plan that enables people to travel from east to west and north to south, connecting to existing cycle lanes in neighbouring boroughs. There is nothing in this budget that is working to a positive cycling environment. Last year's plan also stated that it would improve recycling rates. I don't see anything in this budget that is looking to achieve this, and it is highly needed as the latest figures show KNC is amongst the worst boroughs in London when it comes to recycling, and London as a region is the worst performing region in the country. In England, 9 out of the top 10 local authorities on recycling, local authorities on recycling are actually Lib Dem led. So if this budget cannot even live up to its own commitments, and these are not onerous commitments, then this budget is simply not strong enough.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Ariesi, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Last, but I'm going to be the shortest on record, Madam Mayor. I just want to commend the budget and welcome this budget to the Chamber. Just an example how good the budget is, Madam Mayor. I've just tried to use Google Gemini, the AI tool, and ChatGPT, and the answer came up is probably nothing else apart from the fantastic budget. As opposed to Labour budget where ChatGPT crashed, so you can imagine. Madam Mayor, there's so much to speak about, but I just want to just highlight one thing on behalf of all Holland residents that have been asking for improvements in Holland Park, especially the outdoor gym. And I welcome the improvement scheme, 104,000 that's going to be invested for the outdoor gym. And Councillor Will just spoke about the importance of outdoor space. And may I just welcome this improvement scheme for which would benefit majority of the public that uses outdoor gym. It's free, cheaper, and healthier. Not only that, you know, something in addition to that, the structural works at Holland House. May I also thank all the officers who worked for that and the Friends of Holland Park who in partnership with Holland Park. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed, please.
Yes, I'm really sorry. I wasn't going to speak, and I'll try and be very, very brief. It's just been quite difficult to sort of listen to members on the other side of the chamber talking about the Conservatives being the party of fiscal responsibility and balanced budgets. When the Conservatives came into power 14 years ago, or whenever it was, since then the debt has actually more than doubled. It now stands at more than 2 trillion. They've increased the national debt more than every Labour government combined. These are just facts, and I think it's important to note this when we're sort of making these quips that we've heard again and again about socialism and other people's money. I mean, that is actually how you run a society. You tax and you invest. There were just 2 points. I want to mention Councillor Thaxter's point about the need to invest in the training of our care workers. This is a group that needs to be invested in, as the recruitment and retention crisis is not only a travesty and causing significant harm to residents through the outsourcing, but it's actually causing significant financial burden as well. It's highly, highly inefficient, and the way to manage that is to invest in training rather than cut these services and try and move this work onto untrained volunteers. The other point I wanted to make very briefly was the one around the free school meals. Really it's about the food insecurity and the link to obesity. In addition to what Councillor Ali was talking about around health inequalities, which is taking years of people's lives if they are born in the wrong part of the borough. One of the biggest areas where we see an impact on this is around obesity rates, particularly in wards like Golborne and Nottingdale. In Golborne now, two-thirds of all 11-year-olds are entering secondary school obese, clinically obese. And a massive driver of obesity is food insecurity. And a way to address this is actually universal free school meals. And that's why we would be opposing the cuts to social care and would be commending for the free school meals. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wheel, please. You would like, yeah. I think your microphone's not on.
Thank you. As I say, I wasn't planning to speak, but the Labour Party amendments, use of reserves on this unprecedented level, just forces me to get up on my hind legs. Fundamentally, it is a cruel hoax on residents. Rather than make prudent savings, it basically builds fat into the system, supported by dwindling reserves that they plan to dwindle. In the budget working group, we actually took a very serious approach to reserves, particularly spend to save reserves, and asked to make sure that in future we have reports on whether those spend to save from reserves have actually yielded results, because we are serious about how, on this side of the chamber, about how we use our reserves. And you just have to ask yourself, why wouldn't you take prudently achieved savings that do not affect frontline services? Why wouldn't you plan for future years? The Labour Party's budget amendment, to me, is absolutely baffling. It shows no vision and no financial integrity.
Thank you. I now call upon Councillor Lowry to sum up on the Labour amendments in place of Councillor Ali. Councillor Lowry, you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Proud, ambitious, understanding, caring. This is our Labour Group amendment to the budget tonight. We have a budget amendment that is understanding of the needs of our community and the services that they require. It is true, we are lucky to be in a good financial situation compared to many other councils. However, the repeated complaints tonight by other members about our use of reserves are misguided and misinformed. Firstly, may I remind all members, including the leadership team, that the council does use its reserves, for example last year, to fund pay awards for staff. Secondly, when residents are struggling to find an officer to speak to about disrepair, overcrowding, evictions, children's services, school exclusions, social care needs, all areas in which the council is cutting staffing in, it is insulting to our residents that resources are being funneled and languishing in reserves year on year. The Labour Group budget seeks to address this by tactfully and judiciously using a small amount of our reserves to fund critical services which residents need. We need more staff on the ground, not executive directors sat in their offices. There are councillors here who genuinely believe that local services such as youth services, youth clubs, and infrastructure improvements and libraries should be funded through philanthropy. The Labour Group disagree. This council needs to get the basics right first before anything else. We instead believe that philanthropy should fund Leighton House, paintings, sculptures, and the council should instead prioritise local services in its budget. That's why our budget amendment finds efficient budget savings in transferring Leighton House to National Trust, and instead, with that, proposes to fund free school uniforms, free swimming for young people, an African Caribbean centre, to name the few. Our Labour budget also finds savings in procurement and contract management, in the ill-defined creative economy scheme and reorganisation reserves, and instead proposes to abolish all home care, daycare, social care transport and home meal charges. If Hammersmith and Fulham can do it, so can we, on a balanced budget. The reason why this council cannot is purely ideological and not in keeping with the needs of our residents. Some of our other proposals don't even have any direct financial impact. For example, the restoration of the Grenfell Recovery Scrutiny Committee. This could not come at a more apt time, and it would augment the work of our select committees. Residents do not deserve all the cuts being proposed tonight, while their council tax goes up and they continue to suffer. Therefore, I implore all my colleagues, including all opposition members of all parties, to support our ambitious, positive, progressive Labour alternative budget. It's balanced, it's fair, it's understanding, and it's caring.
I now call on Councillor Thalasitis to sum up. Councillor Thalasitis, you have up to 5 minutes.
I'm going to try and use this microphone in case it's better. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and what a fantastic debate on all sides. I think the message that I heard was resounding support on these benches for a greener, safer and fairer borough as set out in this budget. It's a message I heard again and again with deafening elan from my colleagues on this side of the chamber. I'll deal quickly with some of the opposition members. Kasim thanked Mike and Lisa for the work they did on the shadow budget, but clearly did not note their comments, as has been pointed out. They write, the use of £3.8 million of reserves is not a sustainable long-term solution to manage the budget. And Sina, he's an erudite chap, and he talked about understanding, but he clearly can't have understood those remarks either, because he would have seen them too. He also called on other opposition members to vote against our budget. He's not their whip anymore, I'm afraid. I also heard from Toby. He began his speech by saying that there are certain things he welcomes in this Conservative budget. I've never known him to be backwards and coming forwards. He is no shy nor retiring wallflower, and so I wish he'd have opened up on what he supported in this budget and used his 5 minutes to do that. Councillors Linda Wade and Emma Code talked about some of their ideas. Mercifully, neither of them submitted shadow budgets, and so we were spared their 10-minute perorations. I do, however, want to thank Portia and Mona for their remarks. I note there has been some excellent cross-party work on adult social care in recent times. I know that you've worked with Councillor Knight and others, Councillor Siren too, on the Gordon Hospital. I think it's a good example of how scrutiny can be effective and some of the good ways in which that we're able to work together. However, I will now turn to our Conservative remarks. Josh spoke with great lucidity about the Local Government Finance Act and the need for fiscal rectitude. Will, I want to repeat my thanks to you and to the Budget Working Group for the work that you've done, and I welcome your keen interest in transformation. It's one that I think we all share on this side of the chamber, and probably the other too. I think the abiding themes that I recall are around the need for more amazing spaces and welcoming all the work that's already gone on. I look forward to visiting Bute Street, which Janet mentioned, and going for a coffee there. Tom also mentioned street improvements. I look forward to joining him for a drink on Hollywood Road at some point. Gerard talked about K&C doing money well. I think he's absolutely right. Soph and Greg noted TA pressures and some of the pressures on construction costs. They too are correct. But they're also correct to note that there's been excellent work in prevention and the £1.4 million of extra money that a Conservative government has delivered just today, which I think we should all welcome in this chamber. There's also fantastic progress, as Greg noted, on the New Homes programme, and I think it's going to be fantastic when more of those are opened. Walla too talked about some of the great work happening in family and children's services. She is also, I think, rightly proud of the work happening on Beecham Place, which I think will be a huge improvement. Jem is an indomitable champion for graffiti cleaning and litter picking. I can think of no greater. And he is joined on these benches by the likes of Will, who talked about clean streets being the #1 priority for Queensgate residents and reminding us about the haunting spectre of socialism against which we should be vigilant in Kensington and Chelsea. And I note too that Hamish talked about the street cleaning work that will make a big difference to Earls Court. Emma trailed some of the work coming on the stream in adult social care, and that's very important too. And finally, Arian, who talked about Holland Park, and with my ward councillor hat on, I want to welcome the works that will happen for the outdoor gym, and also thank the Friends of Holland Park for their ongoing contribution. So I think it's been a great debate, and Mary summed it up very well. There is a case for spend save in some instances. We need to be mindful of it, but nevertheless, using reserves to balance the books is a cruel hoax. We must all now vote for that not to happen.
Thank you. We now turn to the votes. I would remind members that the votes on the Labour Group amendments and then the revenue budget, capital budget and council tax need to be recorded in detail in the minutes. There will therefore be two votes. The first vote is on the Labour amendment to the budget. Would those in favour of the Labour amendment press the I button, the top one? Those against press no, the bottom one, and those wanting to abstain, press the middle one. Once the three buttons start to flash, you have 30 seconds to vote. The voting is as follows. For 10. Not voting 2. No 30. I therefore declare the amendment lost. We now move to the vote on the revenue budget, capital programme and council tax for 24-25. The council has before it the recommendations set out in paragraphs 2.1 and 2.2 on pages 39 and 40 of the agenda pack. Would those in favour of press the I button, the top one? Those against, press no, the bottom one, and those wanting to abstain, press the middle one. You have 30 seconds to vote. The voting is as follows: for 28, not voting 2, no 11. I therefore declare the recommendations adopted. We turn now to item 11 brackets 2, the housing revenue account budget and business plan. I call on Councillor McVeigh to move the adoption of the report set out on pages 157 to 188 of the main agenda pack, and Councillor Taylor-Smith to second. Councillor McVeigh to move.
Yes, I move the...
Councillor Taylor-Smith to second.
Yes, I'm beg to second. Thank you.
I call Councillor McVeigh to speak for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This has been a difficult budget to set, but I'm glad we have set a budget because I haven't managed to find anything from the Labour group about the housing revenue account plan. So I assume this silence means they agree with our Conservative HRA budget. So my speech will be very short as a result. Like the rest of the budget, we've been under pressure. It's been a difficult budget to set. We all know the worldwide situation of inflation, cost of borrowing and the steep rise in products for all our building works, particularly as our capital works programme really rely on this, and it's swelled from 400 million to 600 million. But we are committed to this programme because what we're hearing from residents loud and clear that we need to improve our homes. We need double glazing, we need safe insulation, and of course we need our decent new homes, kitchens and bathrooms. But all of this costs. And also we've got to add in the 2 new government regulations, both of which we really do welcome, the Social Housing Regulation Act and the Building Safety Act. They really will transform the sector, but again, as I said, it does cost as a landlord. So with these factors, we've aligned along with other London boroughs and have taken the difficult decision to raise our rents. This is in line with the government rent standard. And it's not a decision we've taken lightly. So unlike many other London boroughs, I've asked that we put in place a tenancy support fund. This is £500,000 to help those who may struggle. Also, we're mindful that our tenants who receive housing benefit or use universal credit, which is about 2/3, so 1/3 get full benefits and 1/3 get a mixture, they will be protected to some extent as benefits are going up by 6.7%. But, Madam Mayor, with the sheer increase in costs we're facing, a rent increase alone will not balance our budgets. And as you know, we have to provide a balanced budget. So as a result, we've developed a borough-wide non-estate policy dispersal policy, which Councillor Hammond mentioned in his previous speech. And thank you for drawing attention to that. And this allows us to sell individual street properties, so not on estates, and this will be all over the borough. And these properties, again, as Councillor Hammond said, they cost a lot more to repair. And it doesn't make sense when we're so tight for money to be spending extra money on them. So they'll only be sold when they become naturally vacant, and again, each one will be looked at on a case-by-case basis. So this budget does contain difficult decisions. However, it's not all doom and gloom. We have recently put in our 2,000th new double-glazed window. Yay. And over half the homes on the Lancaster West estate are internally refurbished. And we have got a 5-star ranking from the Building Safety Council. So that's really, really good news, and that is something we are really proud of. So just to remember that it's not just about finances, we don't forget that we're talking about people's homes. This budget and the business plan with it will make our homes warmer, greener and safer, and will deliver on a capital works programme that really does have residents at its heart. So thank you, and I commend this HRA budget.
Thank you. Councillor Simmons, please.
Thank you very much. Before I begin, if I could just say something on the subject of sound, conservative financial management. Councillor Lane may actually not be aware that the savings on Grenfell Tower refurbishment of £400,000 has cost the taxpayers of this council £469 million so far. That's other people's money, Councillor Lane, as well as their lives. I'd also like to make a quick correction to Councillor McVeigh. She has not introduced the Tenancy Support Fund. It is having to be increased, more than doubled, because of concern over the impacts on our vulnerable residents of the rent rises, which I'll come to in a second. Madam Mayor, this is an ambitious HRA budget and business plan, and I commend the officers on the difficult task of presenting a balanced budget, for which we must also thank the tenants and leaseholders without whom it would not be possible. Given the challenges and delivery items it needs to meet, it is absolutely right that the Council will be undertaking a fundamental review of the HRA in 2024. We've heard that the increases to rents and service charges are necessary because the housing revenue account is under extreme pressures. Some of the pressures referred to are due to the economic operating environment, traceable to policy decisions at the central government level. Some are due to costs of implementing the new regulatory frameworks. And some of these pressures are due to the cumulative effect of this Council's own decision-making over the previous decades. Crucially, none of these pressures are the fault of tenants or leaseholders. So how is it fair to expect them to pay more because of any of this? We've heard that the Council's housing stock is in need of intensive investment. Why is that? After the disastrous and unaccountable tenure of KCTMO, which terrorised residents for years and only ended after mass fatality, the Stock Condition Survey in 2019 identified a backlog of repairs and maintenance of £350 million. How did that happen? Is anyone actually asking that question? Where was this Council's oversight or scrutiny at any point on that journey to £350 million? Questions are still today being asked about charges for maintenance in that period, which was either substandard or in some cases appears to have never even happened. Where did residents' money go? We've seen in this budget that rents alone are not able to meet the shortfall, deliver the service and the capital programme and spending required, to the point where we are now having to sell and re-provide non-estate properties. The HRA is ring-fenced. We have borrowed against our housing stock, and we have had a 5-year funding gap of over £500 million. With no offence to the officers at all, because it's not their fault either, it is a mess. If admission of failure feels uncomfortable, Councillor Campbell says that that is fine with her. I say this state of affairs and the impacts we're now seeing on the HRA is in part the legacy of a massive organisational failure in the past, for which tenants and leaseholders are not responsible and should not be held accountable by being made to pick up any part of the bill. That's right. Yeah. The increase to the existing Tenant Support Fund is a welcome, necessary mitigation, but I reject the premise that residents should have to pay for past neglect. It's not enough to say that this injustice is a cruel irony, as the Director of Housing said, and just carry on regardless. Madam Mayor, I think the Council understands we can't go on like this. This budget shows that the HRA and its parameters need a radical rethink. Specifically, we need to change the mindset in this Council, the budget's dirty secret that assumes that wherever there is a shortfall of any kind, be it financial, be it in service delivery, be it in the quality of decision-making, we just let residents pay the cost. This is not a reasonable assumption that should be underpinning any budget or business plan, least of all in Kensington and Chelsea. Yeah. And in the current climate, it's not a realistic assumption either. We have new lead members now, and we have excellent new officers at the senior level. They have inherited a legacy that isn't their fault, but I believe we as a council are more than capable of meeting the challenge and of the creative thinking needed to put this right fairly. To quote a certain member of the leadership team, where there's a will, there's a way. I look forward to the fundamental review. For this year, I expect the Tenant Support Fund to meet the needs in full, including the Traveller's Site,
I expect to see zero loss of tenancies because of these rent and service charge increases, including at the Traveller site. But most of all, I expect to see a budget next year that does not rely on tenants or leaseholders to pay costs and make up shortfalls they did not create, but whose impacts have blighted their homes, their lives and their pockets all along. We can and should do better, and I'm hopeful that the Council's review will move us in this direction. The Housing and Community Select Committee will also be keeping this HRA under review. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor-Smith, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't intending to speak, but I felt that if Councillor McVeigh was going to do a sum up, it would be nice to have something to sum up on. So first of all, can I just agree with Councillor Simmons on one thing, and that is that we inherited a mess, an absolute mess. And we're going to try and do our best, and Councillor McVeigh is demonstrating that in order to address that. And this was a mess on both sides. I think the Labour group forgets the representation on the committees, and et cetera, but we won't go there. You know, there are two really significant numbers within this report, and that is on para 5.9, 7.7%. That's a large amount of money, and we have to feel for the fact that our residents are getting their notification in the post at the moment of what that increase is, and that's something which is none done lightly. It's something which, if we benchmark with every other London borough in London, we'll find everybody else doing the same. People are facing the same challenges. It's not a question of a lack of care. It's prudent accounting. The other number that's in here under paragraph 9.14 is the shortfall on the capital programme. I mean, the reality is that we've done successive reviews, condition surveys, plus we've added in greening, and it's come up with a staggering figure of 620 million. And we're spending that. And that's not because our properties are any worse than other boroughs. If you go to other boroughs, believe me, where they have exhibition slots, but they're not spending the money. We are committing to spend the money. But that £200 million is the shortfall. The thing that I get very depressed about is actually the Labour group, because as Councillor McVeigh pointed out, where is the comment? Where is the comment or the impact onto this budget in terms of what we should do? What percentage should we be charging, or what we should be doing to refinance that? And I find the deafening silence, including the chairman of the Scrutiny Committee, not coming up with suggestions on a budget, really disappointing. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Wade.
I mean, I think this is just a kind of an observation, really. We all agree that we have a shortage of social rented housing. And the condition of the social housing hasn't arrived overnight. So the damp, the mould, the cockroaches, they're really the result of years of neglect and underinvestment. So if the borough relies on housing associations for 70% of its supply, actually, I think there are two things. One, we need to support RSLs more effectively. We need to ensure that properties are safe, warm and secure. And quoting from Paul Haggett, who's CEO of Southern Housing, which incidentally is selling some of its properties off, 3 times as many social homes were sold or demolished in 2022 to 23 as were built. And it's clear that the housing crisis is set to get a whole load worse. So I would like this borough to actually look at social rented housing in the round. We do need to have building, but the problem is on the development sites, they're not going to develop as social rented. If you look at Earl's Court, I think we're going to get, isn't it about 3, it's not very much, is it, Hamish, we're going to get for social rented housing. So I think we really do have to make sure that homes are appropriate, and also that the staffing of the management of it at ground level is made far more efficient. So I think the one thing that I got from Paul Haggett again was why, given the demands on social rented housing, whichever deliverer, is increased because of government legislation, why isn't central government helping to fund the additional costs? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Councillor McVeigh, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it's been a short debate, which is a shame because our housing budget is a huge part of what we do as a council. It's one of our most important services. So again, I do express my disappointment with the Labour group not having even done one line on it in their budget. But having said that, I have appreciated working with Councillor Simmons in her role as chair of the Housing Scrutiny Committee, and I value your input on that. So separate from the Labour aspect. And thank you for acknowledging that we do have some excellent officers, and I think that is completely agreed across our housing team, so thank you. Yeah, Councillor Taylor-Smith said yes, our rent increase is the same across London. We must bear this in mind. A one-bedroom flat in Kensington, Chelsea, social housing will cost £135 a week. So this is not different from other parts of London. And as you again said, it's easy to criticise, but it's much harder to come up with solutions and with ideas. I mean, we can all kind of, throw complaints at things, but please come up with some other ideas, and I'd love to hear them. Councillor Wade, thank you for talking about lots of options to meet our growing needs. You're right, we really do need to look at that. One thing that came up today when I was at the Customer Service Centre, which again do an excellent job, they were saying that if we can encourage more of our residents to downsize, those who no longer need these large family homes, we can actually meet the needs of all the people in our temporary accommodation that need these larger homes. I mean, the numbers are practically the same, which is extraordinary. So we're doing quite a bit of work to do that. So it's all about joining together lots of different pieces of the puzzle, which I think we have done in our HRA budget. And as I said, it has been a challenging one to do, but I completely recommend it to you all, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Are the recommendations set out in paragraph 3.2 on page 40 of the agenda pack adopted? Sure. May I please have a show of hands? Thank you. I declare the recommendations adopted. Now, we now turn to item 11.3, Annual Treasury Management Strategy Statement 24-25. I call on Councillor Thalasitis to move the adoption of the report on pages 189 to 230 of the main agenda pack, and Councillor Taylor-Smith to second. Councillor Thalasitis to move, please.
I beg to move, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Kim Taylor-Smith
I
to
beg
second.
to second, Madam Mayor.
I call Councillor Thalasitis to speak up to 5 minutes.
You will be relieved to hear that I don't intend to speak to this paper.
Wonderful. I now invite members who indicate to speak for up to 5 minutes each. Does anybody want to speak? No. Thank you. Are the recommendations set out in paragraph 4.2 on page 41 of the main agenda pack adopted? Yay. I declare the recommendations adopted. Item 12. I now invite Councillor...
I think you might just check it's okay to go on for 5 minutes.
Are you chaps okay to carry on a bit longer? Just to finish off. Let's see.
Item 12 and item 17.
Just item 12 and item 17. Sounds good? Thank you. Sorry, number 15.
SO11.
I think 12 and 17. I agree 12.
Well, let's see what the whips are consulting with.
Yeah.
David's asking to do
Madam Mayor, could we not do agenda item 15, which is matters of local concern, ahead of 14 questions asked of lead members, or actually not do lead members' questions at all and ask for them to be given in written format rather than verbal format tonight?
Yeah, I'm happy to do SO11s in addition to the essential business.
Okay. So we're going to do 14 now. Okay, item 12. I now invite Councillor Kim Taylor-Smith to propose the reception of the report from the Administration Committee, pages 231 to 245 of the agenda pack, and Councillor Talasitis to second, please. Councillor Kim Taylor-Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased to propose.
Councillor Talasitis.
I second.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor-Smith, would you like to speak up to 5 minutes?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I will. Obviously, having been crudely dashed on my response to lead member questions, I feel I should speak.
Thank you.
As tabled, Madam Mayor, I'd like to thank the cross-party members of the working group who considered this issue and whose advice shaped our final recommendations. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Okay. Does the Council agree with recommendations as set out in paragraph 4.1 on pages 232 to 233 of the main agenda pack? Thank you. The recommendations are approved. Now we will go to...
Did it go to
17.
Just get the committee.
Yeah. If you go to... Sorry, just getting to... Okay, item 17, appointments to committees and outside organizations. Item 17, are there any appointments from the groups?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor. The Labour Group is appointing Councillor Marwan El Naghi to the vacancy on the Almanar Board of Trustees. Since Kasim Ali has resigned.
Thank you.
That just says that.
Sorry.
Just ask if it's agreed.
Yeah. Is that agreed? Thank you. Okay. Okay, item 15. Local concerns raised under Standing Order 11. I have received requests to speak under Standing Order 11. Councillor Talasitis to propose.
Madam Mayor, in accordance with Standing Order 42, I wish to move that Standing Order 30 be suspended this evening to allow a fifth SO11, but may I request that, given the time pressures, it's brief.
Councillor Lowry to second.
I second suspension of Standing Order 30 under Standing Order 42.
Is that agreed? Yeah. Okay, that's all right.
Yeah, and then we'll go.
And they just want to write it. Right, I just don't want to. Okay, could the following members please speak up to 2 minutes each on the ward or other live issues that is primarily local in nature. Councillor Jedith.
Thank you for that. Madam Mayor, I am very unhappy to bring to your attention that my residents wanted this to brought to your attention and to attention of the council. And the question is put to the lead member for Labour and at the same time the Dalgano councillor. If he can apologise publicly to 7,000 residents, providing reasons why he have refused funding and failed to respond to officers' emails, resulting in a city living application being closed. So those people who apply for Fun Day Little Scraps with donkey rides would like to have an answer. Midsummer Night Opera Space, Open Space Theatre would like to have an answer. Documentary about Kensal House. Vaccine Treasure, Sport, Mental Health Club, Urban Wise, Greening for Dalgano, free swimming lessons, Christmas lunch, Equal People Day Out and About for Disabled program, Panto in 2022, Panto in 2023, Coronation Court, Hampton Court Day Trip to celebrate King's celebration, coronation, IFTA, which was partially funded, Mental Health for Women, Food Board. This is something which needs to be addressed because residents are not happy not having response. Learning Club, Seaside Trip last year. Learning Club again, 6-week sport activities for 80 children, underprivileged. Learning Club, Homework Club. This defibrillator, a life-saving equipment. Free session, free of charge electric repairs. CCTV cameras in Little Scrubs. This is something really urgent, hotspot for crime. CCTV cameras on Notting Barn with machete attack. And in the same context, why Dalgano funding in sum of 1,800 has been diverted without any consultation with Dalgano local groups towards unknown to them, a celebration where only 16 could attend. And at the same time, Christmas celebration for Dalgano Trust, where door were open to everybody, was just simply refused. So we would appreciate the response to it in writing. Thank you.
It is rather late. Thank you so much. Thank you. Councillor Knight, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to raise a local issue that has caused great concern amongst residents, patients and GPs in our borough, and that is the changes that are due to take place in how same-day primary care is delivered in our borough. The North West London ICB is effectively mandating the use of same-day access hubs with the aim of speeding up how quickly patients can be seen on the day. From what we know so far, which I must say is very little, as GPs and local authorities have been very much kept in the dark until last week on this matter, and there has been no consultation, engagement, evidence or details produced around these changes or the pilots that have taken place, which I do find shocking given the original rollout date was the April 1st. The new service would mean that if a patient required urgent same-day appointment from their GP, when calling their practice, they would instead be diverted to an operator and would then be seen by one of the hubs instead of their regular GP. It is important to say that GPs are not against innovation of their services, and we welcome investment into general practice. However, for significant changes like this, then there should have been a public consultation. General practice is at the front door of the NHS, and our GPs are concerned that this model would not be providing the best care for patients, with one of their principal concerns being that it would erode personalised care and continuity of care. The LMC, the independent voice for London General Practice, has also raised serious concerns about the model, specifically around the safety of patients, as triage in the new hubs will not be done by a doctor, but by someone of a much lower qualification. The difference is that GPs are trained in diagnostics, but care coordinators are not. Patients who receive continuity of care in general practice have better health outcomes, and there is also that element of trust, particularly with our elderly, those with mental health difficulties and long-term conditions, that they feel safe in the hands of their regular practice and GPs who know them and their medical needs and when something might be serious. After what we have faced with recently with the inadequate Gordon consultation, it really feels no lessons have been learned, and I urge the ICB to pause and rethink how they go about this before it is too late, and to hold a consultation with real engagement and to produce this service with those who know general practice best, our GPs as well as the voices of our patients. It is not enough for them to just admit the communication surrounding these changes has been poor, and they know they could have done better. I totally appreciate primary care is under enormous strain nationally, but if the wrong decision is made here and without the support of GPs, such changes could have devastating, long-lasting consequences for the health outcomes of our residents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Durian. You are very brief, so it's fine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The maintenance of pavements on Earls Court Road, and as an aside, in all red routes, is under the control of Transport for London. The long stretches of the pavements on Earls Court Road are now in urgent need of replacement due to damage and staining. Now, while the Council does have responsibility for washing and sweeping on the road, and again, welcome to increased investment in these areas over the past year, we do need TfL to play their part as well. I would therefore ask for the support of the leadership team in raising this matter with TfL and finding a way forward to complete these repairs as soon as possible, perhaps even to tie in with the Council's planned transformation of Hogarth Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I wish to raise an issue of local concern to the residents of Norland. For many months, there has been an erratic level of service at Holland Park Tube Station. Understaffing and management issues has meant that Mayor Sadiq Khan's TfL has overseen a marked decrease in service for Norland and indeed Holland residents in particular. This tube station is used by many thousands a day, yet it is often closed at very short notice. And what irritates those affected the most is that announcement of a station closure are made too late to enable them to get out at an earlier station. And yet, while claiming a lack of funding for the tube, Mayor Khan's TfL now proposes a multi-million-pound scheme across Shepherd's Bush roundabout for cyclists. This is money which could be used to improve the far more in-demand tube network and give local residents an easier and more reliable route to work. This new proposal will result in more vehicles being displaced upon RBKC roads without any mitigation or opportunity from TfL to work with us on resolving this coming situation. And further, and perhaps not surprisingly, there has been minimal consultation with the Council. My residents, Madam Mayor, remain deeply sceptical of Sadiq Khan's plans for Holland Park, for Shepherd's Bush Avenue, so roundabout, and for Holland Park Avenue, and the new proposal finishing on a traffic island at the borough boundary is ominously close to where the erstwhile Holland Park Avenue cycle scheme was to have started. Norland residents are clear that they don't support this scheme any more than they supported cycle lanes along Holland Park Avenue. And I seem to recall near unanimous agreement across this chamber against that scheme when it was first suggested some 5 years ago. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor New, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to bring the attention of the Council an issue at Golborne Ward. The resident of Golborne Ward has been suffering for quite a long time. Number of issues. Firstly, crime and drugs. Some of the areas in Golborne Ward become a focal point for illicit activities, particularly drug dealing, which negatively impact the whole community in that ward. The situation especially is affecting our children who are already impacted what happened during COVID period. Madam Mayor, the recent incidents on the 2nd October last year at West Row involving a horrifying shooting that resulted in 3 bullets hitting or striking a car owned by a local resident is a stark reminder that escalating dangers our residents face in that particular ward. Just a few weeks later, in October 19th, a fatal stabbing has happened again in Kensal Road, which resulted the loss of life of 30 years young man in our roads. Madam Mayor, in Golborne Ward residents have suffered this issue for quite a long time. the leadership team can do better and should do better to protect and serve our residents. At this point, I wish to express my thanks to the leader, to the leader of the council, the lead member for communities, the chief community safety officer of the council, for their prompt response when this incident took place. Talking to our communities, especially the residents. We wanted the leadership team to work with our council elected members and the communities to address this issue. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Item 14, questions asked of lead members under Standing Order 22 will be answered in writing. Happy? There is no urgent business to bring to the Council's attention. That concludes the business of this evening's meeting of the Council. The next meeting of the Council is a full Council meeting scheduled to be held on 22nd of May 2024. Oh, sorry, Councillor Evans.
I wanted to point out that it's your last session as mayor leading us in the council. Let's have a nice standing ovation for Pretty.
You are very kind. Thank you. Thank you all, and thank you to the fantastic team on this bench. I'm just a voice box. Thank you all, and see some of you for supper. And good night, everyone. Thank you again.